Chapter 224. The person 5 kilometers away quickly turned into ashes when Happy said the word die. Then, Happy looked at the psychic grandmaster who had fled the furthest 3 kilometers away. Die. The psychic grandmaster was also turned into ashes. Then, the 3 mercenaries 2 kilometers away were also turned into ashes. In a short 30 seconds, 15 people were turned into ashes. The faster he ran, the faster he would die. This caused the remaining mercenaries to be greatly shaken. They were scared out of their wits. They didn't dare to move at all. Meanwhile, everyone on the ground was completely stunned at this moment. Even if Happy was dealing with the people in the sky. Whoever he ordered to die would die. He ignored the opponent's level and ability. Such a terrifying ability was like the god of death in their eyes. In addition, her eyes, which had no white in them and were as black as a black hole, made everyone who looked at her feel extreme fear. Her eyes were too terrifying. As long as they looked at each other, they would feel that they would never forget those eyes in their lives. It was as if those eyes had grown in their hearts. No matter where they went in the future, those eyes would stare at them. Until the end of their lives. That was the real gaze of death. At that moment, Happy didn't continue to speak. His eyes, which were like black holes, stared at the 2,000 people in the sky. Those 2,000 people didn't dare to move at all. Even if their skin was itchy, they didn't dare to scratch it. Even if they blinked, their hearts would tremble in fear. They were afraid that if their movements were too big, they would attract the attention of the terrifying woman below. Then, the word die came out of his mouth. They would be turned into ashes. Under such high pressure, cold sweat dripped down their foreheads. They felt that the string in their bodies was about to break. It was under such high pressure that someone suddenly remembered a legend in the flaming continent. He couldn't help but widen his eyes in fear and stutter. This is the legendary God. God's oracle. Hearing his words, the other 2 also remembered the legend. That was just a legend that they would occasionally see in some magazines or in some supernatural novels. Legend had it that in ancient times, there was a person who had 2 terrifying abilities. The first ability was absolute defense. In other words, he could ignore all attacks. Telekinesis, energy, and physical attacks, any attack that landed on his body would not cause him any harm. Even if the strongest attack in the universe landed on his body, it would not cause him any harm. Second ability, absolute destruction. If he wanted to destroy someone or anything, he only had to say the word die, and that thing would be destroyed. No matter how sturdy something was, it wouldn't be able to withstand a single death from him. These 2 abilities were completely above any law of the universe. Even a god was nothing more than an ant in front of a heaven's oracle. The words spoken by the heaven's oracle were like the will of the heavens. That was why he was called the Oracle of Heaven. There was an old saying on the flaming dawn continent, if the heavens want you dead, you have to die. Being a heaven's oracle was a mistake made by the Creator. Some people joked that when the Creator was at work, he took a nap, and the oracle was born. Of course, everyone knew that this was just a myth. Just like Nuwa on Earth created humans and Kwafu chased after the sun. However, what they saw today was exactly the same as the legendary Heaven's Oracle. She ignored telekinesis attacks, ignored energy attacks, and had absolute defense. If she wanted someone to die, she only had to say the word die, and that person would die. An unreasonable attack. An unreasonable defense. It was completely above any law of the universe. Of course, the Oracle of Heaven in their myths could destroy an entire galaxy with a single word. The woman in front of them was clearly far inferior to the terrifying Oracle of Heaven in the myths. But no matter how far inferior she was still an oracle. And who knew if she had used her full strength? In fear, these people floated in the sky motionlessly. They didn't dare to run far, nor did they dare to land. They just floated quietly. At this moment, Happy didn't speak anymore. At the same time, Immerse had just left Antarctica. He was burning with anxiety. He had already ordered the clone in Huaxia to rush to base C1. However, the clone's strength was clearly far from enough to stop the 2,500 mercenaries. He had to rush back as soon as possible. The sooner the better. With this mentality, he displayed the small success dragon's shadow step to the extreme. One step, 10 kilometers. Another step, still 10 kilometers. And it was no longer one step per second. Instead, it was continuous. He could run several steps per second. In other words, he could reach dozens of kilometers per second. But even so, he still felt that it was too slow. At this speed, it would be too late if he rushed back. While his heart was burning with anxiety, he did his best to execute the dragon's shadow step. At a certain moment, he took a step forward. His figure instantly disappeared. There was actually a 1,000-meter-tall dragon's shadow left on the spot. In the next moment, his figure instantly appeared 100 kilometers away. One step, 100 kilometers. Dragon's shadow step, great mastery. The small mastery of the dragon's shadow step looked like teleportation, but it was actually running. One step, 10 kilometers, and it was running. And the great mastery of the dragon's shadow step was teleportation in the true sense. Mo sure didn't know the principle behind it. But after Xiaolong's dragon's shadow step reached the extreme, it seemed to naturally be able to teleport. It was like a lot of drivers. They didn't know the principle of a car, but they knew how to drive. Great mastery of the dragon's shadow step, one step, 100 kilometers. A distance of more than 10,000 kilometers was only 100 steps. At a certain moment, in the quiet C1 base, a figure suddenly appeared without warning. It was Mo sure. Everyone in the base saw Mo sure appear. One by one, they heaved a sigh of relief. Their hearts became more at ease. As long as Mo sure was around, there was no problem that he couldn't solve. When the people in the sky saw Mo sure appear, they were all shocked. Even in the flaming land, no one could teleport like this. What was the background of this person? But Mo sure didn't have time to care about anyone at this moment. Dragons will instantly swept across the base. He quickly found Happy's position. But when he saw Happy, he frowned. At that moment, Happy no longer had the infectious smile on his face that had always been on his face. Instead, his face was cold. There was no white in his eyes. Those pitch-black eyes were like two black holes. Even Mo sure felt a chill in his heart when he saw it. He teleported again and arrived beside Happy. Happy. Mo sure called out nervously. Chapter 225. Happy. Mo sure called out nervously. However, Happy did not respond. Happy? Mo sure quickly grabbed Happy's hand. Her hand was cold. In the next moment, Happy seemed to be unable to hold on any longer. She collapsed weakly in Mo sure's arms. Mo sure's heart tightened again. The dragons will quickly probed Happy's body. He saw that Happy's body was normal. Mo sure knitted his brows tightly. If her body was normal, why did her eyes become like black holes? Why didn't she respond when he called her? And her hands were so cold? He quickly activated the blood dragon's eye. His eyes were blood red. He looked at Happy. He wanted to see through the surface to see what was wrong with Happy. Species, human, level 1 oracle, ability, absolute destruction. When Mo sure saw this, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Happy's oracle had finally awakened. As for this ability, absolute destruction. Seeing this, Mo sure was slightly stunned. What kind of ability was this? But no matter what, as long as Happy was fine, it was fine. At the same time, the 2,500 people in the sky saw that the oracle had fallen. They all heaved a sigh of relief. When the other two captains who had reached level 6 saw this, they looked at each other. One of them called out, "Great Psychic, tear that oracle apart first." When the few great psychic masters heard this, they also came to their senses. This Heaven's Oracle was the biggest problem. If they killed her first, the rest of the people would be ants in front of them. Thinking of this, the psychic power of the 5 level 2 psychic masters attacked Happy at the same time. Immerse was carefully handing Happy to a female hunter beside him. Suddenly, he sensed 5 huge waves of psychokinesis coming at him. The anger in his heart was like a monstrous wave. A dragon had a reverse scale, and those who touched it would die. Happy was Immerse's reverse scale. He split out a strand of dragon's wool to protect Happy. Then, the remaining dragon's wool bombarded the 5 psychic masters. Bang 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 bang, almost in an instant, the 5 great psyche masters all exploded into a bloody mist. The remaining level 1 psychics who were about to attack immediately retracted their draconic wills in fear. One of the psyche grandmasters pointed at Immerse and screamed in horror. "Oh no, he's a psychic master." When the 2 groups of 500 people saw this, they were all shocked. How could there be other psychic masters here? At this time, a level 5 hunter heard the order and rushed towards Immerse. He's a psychic master, but his body is only that of an ordinary person. Everyone, charge. Close in and kill him. Therefore, the 2,400 wasteland hunters attacked Immerse at the same time. All of them knew that the best way to deal with a great psyche master was to get close. In close combat, a psychic grandmaster was no different from an ordinary person. However, at this moment, Immerse's right arm quickly transformed into a 3-meter-long battle axe. At this moment, the shape of the battle axe was different from his original genetic weapon. The battle axe was double-edged. The double-edged edges looked like the wings of a giant dragon. The center part looked like the body of a giant dragon. The top part of the axe looked like the head of a giant dragon. The handle of the axe Immerse was holding was the tail of a giant dragon. From the front, it was also in the shape of a giant dragon. From the back, it was also in the shape of a giant dragon. Fire Dragon Battle Axe. At the same time, the blood-red energy stored on Immerse's back flowed along his arm and into the Fire Dragon Battle Axe. The eyes of the Fire Dragon Battle Axe suddenly lit up with a blood-red glow. In the next moment, Immerse waved the Fire Dragon Battle Axe. The double-edged edges of the battle axe also lit up with a blood-red glow. It looked like a blood-red fan-shaped trajectory. This fan-shaped trajectory was 1,000 meters long and 300 meters wide. The moment the genetic and energy weapons of the surrounding hunters that were charging towards Immerse came into contact with the blood-red trajectory of Immerse's Fire Dragon Battle Axe, all of them were severed. At the same time, their bodies were also cut in half by the blood-red energy. With just one swing of the axe, over 100 hunters were cut in half along with their genetic weapons. Among them, there was no lack of level 5 hunters. Last time, when Immerse fought against a level 5 hunter, he had to use the giant axe twice to kill him. But this time, the upgraded Flame Dragon Battle Axe easily split more than 100 hunters into 2 halves with just one blow. This was the power of the Fire Dragon Battle Axe. Seeing this, the rest of the hunters were all shocked. How was this possible? Wasn't this guy a psychic grandmaster? How did he become a hunter? No, he wasn't a hunter. The energy weapons used by hunters could only shoot out energy rays at most. Only the energy weapons used by hunters could shoot out such a huge energy blade. This guy was actually a hunter? All the hunters and psychic grandmasters felt like they had been F***ed. Not only was he a psychic grandmaster, but he was also a hunter. It was impossible for such a person to be unknown in the Flaming Land. They were all powerful existences that ruled over a region. How come they had never heard of this guy before? Moreover, there was no need for such a person to come to a broken place like the first hunting ground to train, right? If they wanted to go, shouldn't they at least go to ancient places like the Dragon Burial Valley and the Falling Dragon Sea to train? Immerse did not give them any chance to react. He stood on the ground and did not even move a single step. He swung the Fire Dragon Battle Axe in his hand continuously. In the sky, the hunters and psychokinesis did not even have a chance to escape under such an attack. They were all cut in half along with their genetic weapons. In just a few swings of the axe, 700 to 800 people died under the axe. When the remaining 1,000 or so people saw that this person was actually a hunter, they were all scared out of their wits and turned to escape. However, could they escape? Immerse's dragon was swept across and everyone fell from the sky directly to the ground. Moreover, they smashed heavily on the ground. The ground was smashed to the point that cracks appeared continuously. Some people's heads even fell directly to the ground. At this point, all the mercenaries had completely lost the thought of resisting. They were facing a psychic grandmaster, and a hunter at that. Even if they resisted, only death awaited them. Lord Hunter, we were wrong, we were wrong. Please spare our lives. Lord Desolate Hunter, we have offended Lord Heaven's messenger and you. We only ask that you be magnanimous and let us go like farts. They were filled with regret. If they had known this would happen, they would not have dared to come to the first hunting ground no matter how much money they were offered. Some of them were originally resting. However, when they heard that the reward for this mission was much higher than before, they immediately ended their vacation and rushed over. Now, it seemed that their decision was very stupid. If they had known this would happen, they would not have dared to come to the first hunting ground. Immerse did not have the slightest bit of pity for these people who were begging for mercy. His dragon was swept across and plundered a few people's memories. Then, the fire dragon battle axe swept across. Swish, all the 1,000 or so people were cut in half. Now they knew they were wrong. It was too late. Chapter 226. Of the 2,500 people, only a dozen or so had been killed by him. The rest had all been killed by Immerse. As a level 10 great hunter, he was able to kill 2,500 psychic masters and hunters. This was simply unimaginable on the flaming continent. Of course, Immerse had the bonus of dragon will. But on the flaming continent, even if he cultivated both psychic power and hunters, he could at most kill 1 or 2 psychic masters and hunters. Immerse had killed nearly 2,500 people who were of a higher realm than him, and there was no lack of level 5 hunters among them. And all of this was thanks to the Flame Dragon Battle Axe. On the flaming continent, only hunters and above could release such a large amount of energy attacks. But now, Immerse had the Flame Dragon Battle Axe. As a level 10 great hunter, he could release such a large amount of energy attacks. This was too much of an exaggeration. Of course, the Flame Dragon Battle Axe was powerful, but it also consumed a lot of energy. After swinging it a few times, Immerse could clearly feel that more than half of the energy on his back had been used up. If he swung it a few more times, the energy would probably be completely used up. At this time, Immerse put away the Flame Dragon Battle Axe. He took Happy from the woman beside him. Before he left, he said to the Hunter Division leader, Guojutao. Take off their equipment, study it, and choose 2,500 people to equip them. At this time, in the base chief was already dead. The staff officer was also dead. The only person in charge now was Guojutao. When Guojutao heard Immerse's words, he quickly nodded. Don't worry, Mr. Immo. We'll do as you say. In the entire base, only a few people dared to be like Guojutao and call Immerse you instead of you. It wasn't that Guojutao didn't respect Immerse. He had known Immerse for a long time. He just felt that he used to call Immerse you. If he called him you now, it would create a sense of distance. At the same time, he asked again. Mr. Immo, how is Happy? Do you want me to get a few doctors to take a look? No need. Immerse said faintly. Then, with Happy in his arms, he took a step forward and teleported to the corpse farm. This time, he did not leave behind the phantom of the giant dragon. After the dragon's shadow step reached the large success stage, Immerse could leave behind a giant dragon's shadow or not according to his wishes. Not leaving behind the image of the giant dragon would make it easier to hide their tracks. As for leaving behind the phantom dragon, it had other uses. The people in the base only regained their senses after Immerse left. Immerse had once again saved the base and resolved its crisis. This time, the enemy was very strong, ridiculously strong. In their eyes, he was like a god. In the end, in front of Immerse, he was still killed instantly. What was the upper limit of Immerse's abilities? However, they were already used to Immerse's strength. What shocked them even more was Happy. She was a girl who couldn't even speak normally and could only stay in the corpse farm to do some work that was looked down upon by others. She was actually a terrifying existence who would kill anyone she wanted to kill. This completely overturned their understanding of her. Although they didn't dare to say it out loud before, some people were dissatisfied with Happy in their hearts. Mr. Immerse was so strong, but his woman was just an ordinary person and a mute girl. Wasn't Mr. Immerse afraid that Happy would drag him down? In particular, some women were even more jealous of Happy. Why would Mr. Immerse like a useless mute girl like her? But now, other than shock, people were also in awe of Happy. In the face of an unreasonable existence, you had to die when she wanted you to. How could they not be in awe? At the same time, they also admired Immerse's judgment. They finally knew why Immerse had been so loyal to Happy, an ordinary person, all these years. Mr. Immerse was still the best. His judgment was so sharp. At that moment, Immerse returned to the corpse farm with Happy in his arms. Immerse carefully placed Happy on her bed. He covered her with a blanket. He pulled a chair for himself and sat by the bed, guarding Happy. At the same time, he flipped through the memories that he had just plundered. Soon, he saw the scene of Happy using the death ability. Immerse couldn't help but be shocked. Was the ability of the Oracle so heaven-defying? Whoever she wanted to kill would have to die. It ignored all defenses and levels. When the Oracle's ability was activated, even if the person standing in front of her was the strongest existence in the flaming origin continent, Happy only needed to say the word death to turn him into ashes. Moreover, when the Oracle's ability was activated, she was in an absolute defense state. Any attack that landed on her body would have no effect at all. This was too much of a bug. Since the apocalypse, everything that had happened could be explained by science. However, the Oracle's ability was beyond Immerse's understanding. However, he also knew that this was not a fantasy. It was because he couldn't understand it with his current knowledge. It was just like how the ancients couldn't understand modern mobile phone calls and video calls. In the eyes of the ancients, this was completely the work of the gods. At the same time, Immerse also learned about the legend of the Oracle from the memories of one of the hunters. Legend had it that the Oracle of Heaven could destroy a star field with a single word. This ability was simply too terrifying. No wonder it was called the product of the Creator's mistake. At the same time, Immerse finally understood why Happy didn't know how to speak. With such a bug-like ability, would he dare to let her speak casually? Half an hour later. On the teleportation platform of the first hunting island in the flaming origin continent. As a blue and white light appeared, a figure slowly condensed. This person was none other than the handsome young man, Sha-Chi. He looked up and saw that this was the teleportation platform of the first hunting island. He immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The first hunting ground was too scary. A wild beast was too scary. The 2,500 mercenaries he brought were all annihilated except for himself. As for the other 2,500 mercenaries, needless to say, they were definitely wiped out as well. They even lost a cheetah mech. He was lucky to be able to keep his life. At the same time, he secretly swore that when he became a desolate hunter in the future, he would definitely go back and take revenge. Dismember that desolate beast and that fellow into 1,000 pieces. However, the most important thing now was that Bertha had been killed by him. Without this level 6 psychic, he, as a level 8 desolate hunter, could easily kill her father and avenge his parents. At the same time, he would take back control of the first hunting island. As long as he took control of the first hunting island, wouldn't he be able to control all the creatures in the first hunting ground? By then, it would be even easier to kill that wild beast and that guy. However, he never dreamed that Immerse had already left something in his body. Chapter 227. When Shachi thought that he would soon be able to avenge his parents, the fear and joy of escaping from death completely disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by anger and hatred. He was like a lion going for revenge. His eyes began to turn bloodshot. He strode toward the office of the hunting ground owner, Belki. Along the way, there were many guards on the island. But they knew that Shachi was the son-in-law of the hunting ground owner. They were all trying to curry favor with him. How could they stop him? When Shachi arrived at the hunting ground owner's office, the hunting ground owner was not there. He asked the guard next to him and was told that the hunting ground owner had something to do and would be back soon. Shachi took a deep breath, took the red wine bottle on the table, and poured himself a full glass. Then, he gulped it down. It was not like drinking red wine at all. It was more like drinking cold water. He poured another large glass of red wine and drank it all in one gulp. Then he lay down on the sofa and played with the empty glass with the mechanical hand on his right. He seemed to be very relaxed. In fact, his eyes were fixed on the door. After a while, two figures came in quickly. They were the hunting ground owner and his wife, Belki and his wife. When the couple saw Shachi lying on the sofa, they quickly stepped forward and asked, "Shachi, did you find them? Where's Bertha?" Shachi suddenly sat up with a sinister smile on his face. "Dead." "What?" The hunting ground owner's wife looked pale. Her legs were weak and her body was trembling. Belki frowned and stared at Shachi. "What happened?" Shachi sneered, "Your good son and good daughter are dead." Then he raised his head proudly and said, "I killed them." Belki and his wife heard this and felt like they were struck by lightning. The woman's legs were weak and she collapsed to the ground. Belki took 2 steps back, opened his eyes wide, and kept shaking his head. "No, no. They can't be dead." Shachi saw this and couldn't help laughing out loud. Ha 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 ha. The pleasure of revenge in his heart made him crazy. Belki made him lose his family. He had long wanted him to taste the pain of losing his family. He had long wanted to see the desperate and sorrowful expression on his face after losing his family. Now, he finally saw it. Belki placed his hand on the iron desk and questioned with a pale face. "Beast, what did you do to them?" Shachi laughed as the corners of his mouth twitched nervously. "What did I do? Kill them, tear them into pieces and feed them to the zombies." When the woman heard this, she screamed. His vision went dark, and he fainted. When Baerchi heard this, his body and voice trembled. "Why? Why? Why?" Shachi sneered. "Because I am the son of the owner of the first hunting ground 20 years ago." Before the sound of his voice faded away, his genetic martial art instantly flashed. He immediately stabbed out. Poof! With a muffled sound, Belki's head was nailed to the wall. When the guards outside heard the commotion, they quickly kicked the door open and jumped in. However, when they saw that the hunting ground master was nailed to the wall by his son-in-law using a genetic weapon, their expressions changed drastically. Now that the hunting ground master was dead, there was no need for them to work for him anymore. Moreover, they were only level 1 or 2 hunters. How could they be a match for a level 8 hunter? Next, Shachi twisted the head of the hunting ground master's wife in front of all the guards. Still, none of the guards dared to make a sound. Shachi looked at the bodies of the couple and the entire first hunting island outside the window. He had made up his mind. Next, he would reorganize the forces on the first hunting island. There were more than 50,000 people on the first hunting island. After reorganizing these forces, he would add to the Sandstorm Hunter group. The Sandstorm Hunter group's strength would be greatly improved. Then, he would go to other hunting grounds to improve his strength. When he became a hunter, he would go to the first hunting ground again. Kill that wild beast, destroy that guy. Thinking of this, Shachi could not help but feel proud. He laughed wildly. Ha 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 ha. However, his voice came to an abrupt stop here. This was because an invisible shockwave had already spread out from his body. Almost instantly, it spread out to a radius of 100 kilometers. If one looked down from the sky, they would see a big blood-red circle spreading rapidly with the hunting ground master's office as the center. The Zero virus had broken out. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, all living things were infected with the Zero virus at this moment. Whether it was animals, plants, or microbes. A very regular circle appeared in the center of the first hunting island, which was originally full of greenery. The whole circle was filled with blood-red color. At this moment, all the humans turned into zombies at an extremely fast speed. And all the zombies on the first hunting island had undergone a second mutation at this moment. They mutated into monsters that did not look like humans. Some grew 6 legs. Some grew 2 heads. Some had a bloody hole in their stomachs, and another head grew out of the bloody hole. It looked extremely horrifying and disgusting. And within a radius of 100 kilometers, the infected creatures would continue to spread out. They would bring the virus out of the infected area. And the scariest thing about the Zero virus was that it could be spread through the air. So, in just 2 days, the entire first hunting island had been completely infected. Fortunately, the surroundings of each hunting island were completely isolated by the sea. And there was also an air isolation system that covered the entire island. Basically, every hunting island had the same air isolation system. It was to prevent the virus in the hunting grounds from spreading to the flaming origin continent. At this point, the entire first hunting island had become a completely uninhabited area. The first hunting island was originally an inconspicuous place, and very few people came here. Now, it was all infected. So, at least in the short term, no one would disturb Earth. This was Immerse's plan. Of course, this plan could only be delayed for a while. One day, someone would come to the first hunting island again. There would be a day when someone would investigate Earth. But this day would definitely not come soon. Immerse, on the other hand, could take advantage of this time to improve his strength. With his current strength, if he used all his trump cards, he would be invincible below level 10 hunters. And when he became a hunter one day, he was confident that he would be able to fight a level 10 hunter even if he did not use the Azure Dragon avatar. Of course, Immerse did not immediately improve his strength at this time. He was still guarding Happy's bed. Before Happy woke up, he was still a little worried. While guarding Happy, Immerse checked in his mind. System, checking in for a special event. Chapter 228. System, sign in for a special event. Immerse said. Sign in successful. Sign in event, destroy the enemy from the flaming continent. Sign in reward, 1 overclocked particle gun, 1 cheetah mecha. Immerse was puzzled. This overclocked particle gun sounded very high-end. Could it be the technology of the flaming continent? He focused his attention on the overclocked particle gun in his backpack. Overclocked particle gun, also known as overclocked particle emitter. Technology that surpasses the flaming continent. It can emit overclocked particles that penetrate the energy shield of the mecha and cause damage to the mecha. Immerse was delighted. He took out the overclocked particle gun. It looked like a barrel. His entire arm could reach into this barrel. Inside the barrel, there was a handle. Immerse reached his right arm into the barrel and grabbed the handle. The next moment, the entire barrel began to eject components. Click, 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 there were more than a dozen soft sounds. The entire barrel had changed shape. It wrapped Immerse's right arm tightly. At the same time, a scope and a barrel popped out. The shape of the gun looked like a rifle. Most of it was black. But there were several streamlined fluorescent lights on the gun. There was no trigger on the gun. Immerse was puzzled. How could he shoot without a trigger? While he was puzzled, countless red rays were produced from the barrel. These rays could directly illuminate Immerse's right arm. Then, through the nerves on his right arm, they were directly connected to the neurons in his brain. Immerse's brain suddenly felt as if there was something extra. The next moment, he suddenly realized that this overclocked particle gun was actually controlled by his brainwaves. In other words, he could shoot with his consciousness. Damn, which superplane's technology is this? Immerse couldn't help but exclaim. According to the memories of the people he plundered, although the technology of the flaming continent was much more advanced than that of Earth. But there was no technology to control guns with consciousness. Immerse was still thinking about how to deal with the cheetah mecha. Now that he had the overclocked particle gun, this problem was solved. As for the cheetah mecha, Immerse glanced at it in his mind. On the surface, this cheetah mecha looked exactly the same as the cheetah mecha from the Sandstorm mercenary group. But in reality, the Sandstorm mercenary group's cheetah mechas were second-hand mechas retired from the military of the Flaming Land. On the other hand, Immerse's was a brand new mecha. However, when Immerse saw the mech's description, he felt a headache coming on. Just by knowing the computer technology on Earth, it was impossible to control it. He also needed to understand the soul's algorithm, adhesion codes, and other computer knowledge from the Flaming Continent. Of course, all of this information was contained in the manual of the mecha. However, Immerse had never been interested in computers. It was too difficult for him to learn this knowledge. It seemed that he had to find a few people who were interested in this kind of thing, just like the Sandstorm mercenary group. While Immerse was thinking, Happy's eyelids suddenly twitched. Immerse was overjoyed and quickly put away the overclocked particle gun. After a moment, Happy opened his eyes. Her eyes had returned to normal. They were still those big eyes that seemed to be able to speak. Happy's complexion also recovered a lot. When she saw Immerse, her eyes immediately lit up, and her gaze kept trembling. Immerse knew what she meant and said, "Happy, I'm fine." At the same time, a warm current surged in his heart. "How are you?" Immerse asked Happy. There was a hint of confusion in Happy's eyes. She gestured, "Brother Immo, what happened to me?" Immerse was shocked. "You don't remember?" Happy shook her head gently and gestured. "Remember what?" Immerse frowned slightly. "Those people who came to our base to cause trouble." Happy still shook her head blankly. However, a contagious smile soon appeared on his face. She gestured. "They must have been dealt with by Brother Immo." Immerse frowned slightly again. After asking a few more questions, he knew. After Happy woke up this time, she was still unable to speak. Moreover, she had no memory of this incident at all. Fortunately, other than this incident, she still remembered everything else. Only then did Immerse's brows completely relax. This was good too. He wanted Happy to always remember happy things. And what happened this time was clearly a dark and terrifying memory to Happy. It was best if she did not remember. After that, Immerse did not leave the base. Instead, he accompanied Happy for 3 days. He wanted to make sure that this incident did not have any negative effects on Happy. Fortunately, the matter this time only affected Happy physically. Her body was very weak. However, with Immerse's recovery medicine, there was no need to worry about this at all. After taking it, she completely recovered 5 minutes later. 10 days later, 100 kilometers away from the Chilean base. One of Immerse's clones finally saw the cheetah mecha. The cheetah mecha was killing some zombies and mutated beasts. Its head and body were constantly shooting energy rays in all directions. Any grass, wood, metal, or stone would only end up being pierced by these energy rays. And those zombies and mutated beasts, without exception, were directly cut in half at the waist by the energy rays on the mecha. Moreover, their wounds were directly burned, and there was no possibility of them recovering and reviving. A few level 10 super mutated zombies had originally planned to use traps to catch the cheetah mecha. However, it had infrared scanning, radar detection, heat sensing, and many other sensing technologies in its body, so it could easily see through the traps. All the zombies were extremely frightened. They did not understand why such a thing suddenly appeared here. They could not break through its energy shield at all. They could not dodge its energy rays. They could not avoid its various detection. Their speed was far inferior to this thing. They could not beat it even if they wanted to, and they could not escape even if they wanted to. In the end, these infected creatures were almost all killed by the cheetah mecha. It was also at this moment that a figure suddenly appeared 1,000 meters away from the cheetah mecha. This person was none other than Immerse. At this moment, an overclocked particle gun had already been formed on his arm. It looked as if his entire right arm had turned into a long gun. It was directly aimed at the cheetah mecha. The cheetah mecha's heat detection had already detected Immerse's arrival. But at this moment, it was killing the last few infected creatures. It did not pay attention to Immerse at all. Immerse's consciousness moved. Whoosh, a stream of bluish-white particles instantly shot out. When this stream of bluish-white particles arrived in front of the cheetah mecha, an energy shield instantly appeared on the cheetah mecha's body. Chapter 229. With a thought from Immerse, the particle gun shot out a stream of blue and white particles. Whoosh, it crossed a kilometer in an instant and shot toward the cheetah mech. The cheetah mech also sensed the attack coming. A yellow energy shield quickly appeared around the mech. However, when the blue and white particles hit the energy shield, there was no reaction. It instantly passed through the energy shield. It was as if the energy shield didn't exist at all. The next moment, the particle stream hit the mech. In just an instant, the cheetah mech seemed to have been electrocuted. Sparks and lightning kept coming out of its body. The yellow energy shield around the mech quickly disappeared. Seeing this, Immerse quickly retracted the particle gun on his right arm. The next moment, the genetic weapon on his right arm formed. He instantly flew 100 meters into the air. The giant axe came down with a bang. Boom, a crack that was 100 meters long and 5 meters wide instantly appeared on the ground. In the center of the crack, the cheetah mech had already been cut into hundreds and thousands of pieces. Sparks kept coming out. This was the characteristic of the mechs of the Flaming Land. The reason why the mechs were so strong was because of the energy shield. With the energy shield, it could block any attack. And once the energy shield was broken, basically any hunter could destroy it with an energy beam from an energy weapon. However, this energy shield alone was enough to stop all the hunters. This was because with the current technology of the Flaming Dawn continent, there was no other way to break this energy barrier apart from a desolate hunter using brute force. And now, Immerse's particle gun was technology that surpassed the technology of the Flaming Land, so it could easily break the energy shield. At this moment, Immerse scanned with his dragon mind and found a fingernail-sized chip in the pile of debris. According to the memory he obtained, even if the mech was destroyed, the mech owner could still locate the chip. Immerse landed and picked up the chip. He gently rubbed his right index finger and finger. The chip suddenly broke into pieces. The cheetah mech was finally dealt with. Next were the spider drones. Each spider drone had a chip in it. So, he had to destroy all the spider drones and then destroy the chips in them. But the world was so big, who knew where those spider drones were flying to now? Moreover, there were quite a number of spider drones. Even with Immerse's abilities, who knew how long it would take for him to destroy all of them? Moreover, these spider drones also had energy shields. Even if others encountered it, they would not be able to destroy it. Only Immerse could do it himself. He pondered for a moment and decided not to dwell on it any longer. The voice in his mind said, "System, check in for a special event." The system's voice quickly sounded frowny face sign in successful. Sign in event, destroy the cheetah mecha, sign in reward, 1,000 overclocked particle spider drones. He checked the rewards in his mind. Overclocked particle spider drone, upgraded version of the spider drone. It can emit a stream of overclocked particles to destroy the energy shields of other spider drones. It was true that whatever he lacked would come. He was just worrying about how to get rid of those spider drones when he received this reward. Then, the next step would be to find a few people who knew computers to operate these overclocked particle spider drones and the cheetah mecha. After returning to the base, Immerse called Guojutao over. He said, "I have a great use for selecting computer geniuses in the base." Guojutao was now the newly elected chief of the base. Immerse had saved the people of the base so many times, so he naturally would not disobey Immerse's words in the slightest. He immediately issued an order to search for computer geniuses in the base. Of course, there were only more than 100,000 people in the base. Moreover, most of these people were now engaged in manual labor. It was undoubtedly difficult to find one or two computer geniuses among them. Immerse also ordered the level 10 psychokinesis in all the bases in the world to search for computer geniuses in their respective bases. These level 10 psychokinesis now had a certain amount of weight in their respective bases. After all, they were the strongest group of people in the base. In just 3 days, more than a dozen bases had selected people who were talented in computer science. After Immerse read the information of these people, he frowned slightly. Many of these people were not young anymore. There was even a person in his 70s who was about to die. For the remaining young people, Immerse made dozens of copies of the books that the system had given him when he rewarded the mecha. He let them study by themselves. As geniuses, their ability to self-study should be very strong. As for Immerse himself, he took advantage of this time to continue controlling the sea dragon clone to devour at the bottom of the sea. Now he was devouring these super mutant beasts at the bottom of the sea to accumulate energy for the sea dragon clone. When he broke through, the sea dragon clone would be able to break through immediately. Secondly, he was looking for an opportunity to break through. He planned to wait for the sea dragon clone to finish devouring the remaining level 10 super mutant beasts in the trenches before heading to Bermuda. More than a month later, Immerse learned about the self-study of those geniuses. The results disappointed him. All the geniuses looked at these books as if they were reading heavenly books. Even some of the geniuses who claimed to be able to easily grasp the knowledge in any computer book they read. They were also at a loss in front of the books Immerse gave them. Some of the computer knowledge in the books was simply beyond their understanding. Some of the knowledge even completely subverted what they had learned. It was the complete opposite of what they had learned. How could they study by themselves? Immerse could only smile bitterly in his heart. Was it really impossible to find a computer genius among the millions of people left in the world? It was also at this time that in several bases around the world, people had been killed by the spider drones. Those spider drones were like hunters, constantly hunting down the people in these bases. People used almost all kinds of methods to deal with them. However, whether it was physical attacks or firearms attacks, they had no effect on these spider drones. Their bodies could produce a kind of earthy yellow energy shield. Even rockets could not penetrate this energy shield. Their bodies were only the size of a fist. It was difficult to find them if they were hidden. Therefore, for a time, these spider drones became a nightmare for those bases. 2 days later, in the evening, Immerse controlled the sea dragon clone to devour a level 10 super mutant beast in a trench. While he was resting, a great hunter cautiously approached the corpse farm. After finding Immerse, he said respectfully, "Mr. Immo, 2 monks are looking for you." Chapter 230. While Immerse was resting, someone came to report that 2 monks wanted to see him. In the apocalypse, there weren't many monks. Immerse had only seen 2 monks since he came to this world. He was slightly puzzled. Why were these 2 monks looking for him? "Invite them in," Immerse said. More than 10 minutes later, the 2 monks, one old and one young, entered the corpse farm. The old monk was in his 60s or 70s, while the young monk was in his 20s. When the old monk saw Immerse, he put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. "Amitabha. How have you been, benefactor Immo?" The young monk also bowed. "Amitabha." He added in his heart, "Good job." Immerse looked at the 2 monks, one old and one young. Both of their clothes were torn in many places. Other than their faces, there was almost no clean place on their bodies. It was obvious that they were travelers. Immerse asked in astonishment, "You too, walked over from base C2?" The young monk looked at his master with some resentment and said, "We sneaked out of base C2. Naturally, no one sent us a helicopter." Immerse looked at the two of them again. Both of them were ordinary people, but they actually left base C2. They walked more than 1,000 kilometers in the wilderness and came to base C1. Although Immerse's clone had basically cleaned up most of the infected creatures in Huaxia. But this old and young man, as ordinary people, actually walked more than 1,000 kilometers to base C2. This was really shocking. Especially considering that this old monk was already in his 60s or 70s, it was even more surprising. Immerse asked, "You two came to see me because the old monk had walked too much, his body looked very weak." The young monk spoke on his behalf. The young monk scratched his bald head and said, "Benefactor Mo, aren't you looking for a computer genius? My master thought that I played all kinds of game consoles very well, so he insisted on recommending me. But I've never touched any computer. The chief of the base passed me over. In the end, my master said that they didn't know what was good for them and insisted on sending me to you personally. I really have to hand it to him. My master is just a bag of old bones. How can he be so spirited? Besides, being good at gaming and being a computer genius aren't even close." The old monk coughed twice and glared at the little monk. Then, he took the water from Happy and drank a mouthful. "That's the general idea." Then, he cast a glance at Happy before he spoke to Immerse. "Big brother Mo, is this sister-in-law? So beautiful. If I can marry such a beautiful wife one day." The old monk looked at the little monk helplessly and said, "Don't worry." Profound reflection. The little monk stuck out his tongue and giggled. "Amitba, color is emptiness." As he spoke, he hurriedly took the cup of water and drained it in one gulp. Then, he handed the cup to Happy. "Sister-in-law, please give me another cup," the old monk said apologetically. Benefactor Mo, Jian Xian lacks discipline. However, he can be considered a genius in any game. At this time, he is at the mercy of others. "Mr. Mo, if you don't mind, please take him in." Immerse looked at the little monk, who was taking the second cup of water from Happy and gulping it down. He nodded. "All right, let him try." Anyway, they couldn't find a suitable person now. The old man and the young man had walked thousands of miles to give them a chance. Thinking of this, Immerse asked someone to copy a set of computer books he had obtained from the system. "Take a look. I'll look for you in 3 days." Immerse said lightly. Seeing this, the old monk immediately put his palms together and said, "Amitba." The little monk added in a low voice, "That's good." He said it in an extremely low voice, thinking that no one could hear it except for himself. However, Immerse took another look at the little monk. The little monk's heart couldn't help but thump. Did he hear it? For the next few days, Immerse didn't bother with the little monk. He controlled the sea dragon clone and swam towards Bermuda in the Atlantic Ocean. 3 days later, he was not far from Bermuda. It was on this day that he went to the residence of the two monks during his rest time. When the old monk saw Immerse, he stood up to welcome him. He said to Immerse, "Benefactor Mo is here." Immerse looked around the room and didn't see the little monk. He probed with his dragon senses and found that the little monk was reading in the bedroom. The old monk called the little monk out. When the little monk saw Immerse, his eyes lit up and he said, "Brother Mo, can you find me a computer? I've been reading these books for the past 2 days without being able to practice. My hands have been itching for a long time. I wanted to look for you, but my master kept stopping me and insisted that I finish reading the 3 books. The old monk explained with a smile, "You haven't even built a good foundation, yet you want to practice. You're like a tree without roots that can't last long." Seeing this, Immerse's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that this little monk was really a genius in this area? He asked the little monk, "How many books have you read now?" The little monk replied, I've read 2. I'm still reading the last one. Immerse asked, can you understand them? The little monk shook his head. I can only understand 20%. But there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be learned through practice. If I had a computer. Immerse was secretly surprised when he heard this. There were so many computer experts from so many bases around the world, but none of them could understand it after so many days. This little monk had never touched a computer before, but he could understand 20% in just 3 days. If he wasn't a genius, then what was? But he still had to verify it. Guojutao, who accompanied him, thought that the little monk was talking nonsense. But he could also see that these 2 monks seemed to have some relationship with Immerse. He immediately said, I'll get someone to find a computer. In the apocalypse, resources such as computers in the bases were prioritized for the laboratory. Ordinary people had never even seen a computer, let alone use one. Immerse waved his hand and said, no need. As he said this, he moved his mind. From his backpack, he took out something that looked like a belt about 10 centimeters wide. He handed it to the little monk and said, tie it to your waist. Everyone was a little confused. Weren't they talking about computers? Why did he suddenly take out a belt? Although the little monk didn't know why, he still tied it to his waist. Immerse pointed to a button on the belt. He said, press it. The little monk immediately pressed it. The next moment, 2 light green lights were projected in front of the belt. Upon closer inspection, these weren't just 2 simple beams of light. In one light, something like a computer keyboard appeared. In the other light, a virtual screen appeared. Chapter 231. A virtual screen and a holographic touch keyboard. When these popped up from the belt, everyone's eyes widened. The older ones had only seen this kind of thing in movies and TV shows before the apocalypse. The younger ones, who were born after the apocalypse, had never seen this kind of thing. Even before the apocalypse, there had never been such advanced technology on Earth. Where on earth did Mr. Immerse get it? Immerse didn't explain. He said to the little monk, try it. The little monk was surprised. His right hand swiped across the virtual screen. Suddenly, the virtual keyboard lit up. He was unlocking the keyboard. The next moment, his hands began to type on the keyboard. He typed very slowly. After all, it was his first time touching a computer keyboard. But the position of his fingers was not wrong at all. After a few minutes of simple testing, his typing speed became faster. As he typed, a picture of a Buddha appeared on the virtual screen. It was just a very simple, rough picture of a Buddha. Only the outline of the Buddha could be seen. On the left side of the Buddha, there were 4 words, Amitabha. On the right side of the Buddha, there were also 4 words, good. As the Buddha's mouth opened and closed, these 8 words kept appearing on the screen. Finally, countless words appeared. These words then converged to form another Buddha. Black lines appeared on the old monk's forehead. This disciple of his had never been normal. He didn't look like a monk at all. The others were surprised. This little monk had only learned how to program for 3 days? Nonsense, right? Immerse's eyes lit up. Learning how to program in 3 days did sound ridiculous. But it didn't rule out that some geniuses could always do some incredible things. Thinking of this, Immerse moved his mind again. He took out the cheetah mech from his backpack. This cheetah mech was 5 meters long and 2 meters tall. Its whole body was cast with black metal. Its whole body was black. Just by standing there, it would give off a breathtaking aura. When everyone saw the sudden appearance of the mech, they all felt a chill in their hearts. The timid ones directly took 2 steps back. Even Guojutao couldn't help but feel nervous. Immerse said, "There's no need to make the programming so complicated for now. As long as you can use the keyboard to control this mecha, it'll be fine. The mech manual is in the system. Look for it yourself." Everyone was a little surprised when they heard this. Mecha? This was not Earth's technology. How many more treasures did Mr. Mo have that he had yet to take out? When the little monk heard Immerse's words, he immediately jumped in front of the cheetah mech. His eyes sparkled, and his face was filled with excitement. He kept stroking the body. He cried out in surprise. Umitba, what a wonderful thing. Mecha? Holy sh*t, Brother Mo, where did you get it? It's actually a real mecha. F***ck, Big Brother Mo, are you really letting me control it? Master, can I say that I'm the F***ck? Don't be angry, it's just an exclamation. The little monk liked to play video games since he was a child, to the point that he was obsessed with them. Naturally, he was also obsessed with the mecha in the game console. Now that he had seen a real mecha, how could he not feel excited? The old monk sighed helplessly. Sigh, this old monk is not good at teaching. I've embarrassed myself in front of everyone. While the little monk was pleasantly surprised, he spent more than 2 minutes to find the mech manual in the system. Soon, the mech was activated. The eyes of the cheetah mech suddenly lit up with a blood-red light. The eyes of the jet-black cheetah suddenly lit up with a blood-red light. It looked even more terrifying. Immerse reminded him. Don't activate the weapon system first. The little monk naturally understood Immerse's meaning. He immediately said, I understand, Big Brother Mo. Then, his fingers tapped on the keyboard a few times, and the cheetah mech slowly moved. The little monk was so excited that he kept crying out. Holy sh*t, this is so wonderful. This feels so good. This is so much better than operating a mech in the game console. Master, I'm so happy. The old monk's shiny head was full of black lines. Even someone as calm as him could not help but scold. Divine reflection. The little monk acted as if he did not hear him at all. He continued to operate the mech while shouting. Everyone was shocked that Mr. Mo actually had such a mech, but they were also shocked by the little monk's genius. He had only self-taught for 3 days and he had already reached such a level. Wouldn't those who had studied for decades cry in the toilet? In fact, it was not their fault. Although the computer knowledge of the Flaming Land was similar to that of Earth in many ways. But there was a large part of it that was completely opposite to that of Earth. The more computer knowledge one had on Earth, the more difficult it was for them to accept the knowledge of the Flaming Land. This was because the knowledge of the Flaming Land had completely overturned their previous understanding. For people like the little monk, who had never studied computer science on Earth, it was easier for them to start from scratch. Immerse said to Guojutao next to him, arrange for him to practice outside the city wall for the next few days. Guojutao nodded. Yes, Mr. Mo. After Immerse finished explaining the matters here, the next step was to focus on improving his strength. Although Hunting Island No. 1 had been destroyed, this could only stop the people of the Flaming Land from coming for a period of time. There was only one way to really make them not dare to come to Earth again, strengthen himself. Therefore, Immerse had to make himself as strong as possible before they came. Immerse controlled the Sea Dragon avatar. After 5 hours of wandering, they had already arrived at the Bermuda area. The Bermuda Triangle was an equilateral triangle located in the Atlantic Ocean. Each side of this triangle was nearly 2,000 kilometers long. In this huge triangle area, there were often mysterious disappearances of planes and ships. It was said that the first person in human history to experience the danger of the Bermuda Triangle was the navigator Columbus. He once led a fleet of ships through the Bermuda Triangle and experienced monstrous waves that he had never seen before in his life. Their ship seemed to be sailing between canyons. All the compasses on the ship malfunctioned, and all the crew members were dizzy. Columbus hurriedly ordered them to return. But because the compasses failed, they couldn't tell the direction at all. Fortunately, their ship finally reached the shore safely. But at this time, they were too far away from their scheduled landing site. Regarding this, Immerse had some understanding in his previous life. And the scientists had already given an explanation. The reason why planes and ships often crashed here was because there was an abnormal tape here. Therefore, When planes and ships passed by here, their electronic equipment would malfunction and eventually disappear. However, people still paled at the mention of the Devil's Triangle. Chapter 232. Immerse came to the Bermuda Sea. He spread out his dragon's will and took in the sea within a 100-kilometer radius. Within his detection range, there didn't seem to be any difference. However, this was only the edge of the Bermuda Sea. He swam toward the center as he searched. According to Immerse's detection, there were obvious fish and shrimp zones in the Bermuda Sea. Some areas had fish and shrimp, while some areas didn't have any fish or shrimp. Immerse thought that this must have something to do with the magnetic tape. After swimming for about 600 kilometers, Immerse finally found something. He saw a flat-topped pyramid in the dark bottom of the sea. The pyramid was about 2,000 meters from the sea surface. The pyramid was about 100 meters tall and had a flat top. Each bottom of the pyramid was about 400 meters long. An underwater pyramid? Immerse was very surprised. He immediately swam toward the pyramid. He came near the pyramid. He used his dragon's will to search carefully several times. He saw that the underwater pyramid was also made of huge stones. Each of the huge stones was the size of a house. The entire pyramid looked magnificent and did not lose to the Egyptian pyramids at all. Moreover, this underwater pyramid was even more complete. Although there were traces of long-term seawater erosion on each stone, at least the entire structure was complete. Immerse swam around the pyramid a few times and didn't find anything strange. There was no entrance either. It seemed that this was just a simple pile of stones. However, when Immerse expanded his dragon's will to a 100-kilometer radius, he found that there were 3 other pyramids within this range. The shape, size, and material of each pyramid were almost exactly the same as the pyramid in front of him. Immerse expanded his search range again. In the end, he found that there were as many as 100 similar pyramids within 1,000 square kilometers. This was a huge group of pyramids. Every pyramid was equally majestic and huge. Even Immerse, who had seen a lot, couldn't help but be shocked. If this discovery was made public in the civilized era of his previous life, it would definitely shock the whole world. Immerse spent half a day carefully exploring this group of pyramids. He finally found that the pyramid in the center of this area was completely different from the other pyramids. The Iwu pyramid in the center was more than 800 meters tall. It was almost twice as tall as the other pyramids. The most special thing was that the material of the pyramid in the center was not ordinary stone. Instead, it was some kind of translucent stone that looked like glass. Immerse swam around the pyramid several times. He used his draconic will to investigate carefully. He found that the layout of the pyramid was indeed like an ancient tomb. The entrance to the tomb was in the center of the lowest level of the pyramid. From the outside, there was nothing out of the ordinary. However, when Immerse used his draconic will to investigate, he was able to detect that there was a mechanism on the boulder. The mechanism was very complicated. If an ordinary person tried to force their way in, they would probably be instantly turned into meat paste by the mechanism inside. However, the sea dragon clone was a terrifying existence that had reached the 10th level of a wild beast. With the current conditions on Earth, there was almost nothing that could break through its body's defenses. Therefore, Immerse didn't care about anything else. His 10-meter-long tail suddenly swept out. Bang! With a loud bang, the boulder was smashed into pieces. A 50-meter-long square passageway appeared on the pyramid. Immerse was inwardly overjoyed. Fortunately, the passageway was 50 meters long. If it was any smaller, the sea dragon clone wouldn't be able to enter at all. His draconic will probed along the passageway first. He already knew the various mechanisms inside like the back of his hand. However, after fully understanding these mechanisms, Immerse didn't care about them anymore. He controlled the sea dragon clone and swam forward. Ding, 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 iron arrows kept shooting out from the cracks in the walls on both sides. However, when these iron arrows hit the sea dragon clone, they kept making tinkling sounds. The scales on the surface of the sea dragon clone weren't afraid of these iron arrows at all. Immerse didn't care at all and continued to swim forward. After swimming 50 meters, the stone walls on both sides began to move and squeeze toward the middle. Immerse sneered in his heart. The giant tail swung violently. Bang, bang, with 2 consecutive sounds, the stone walls on both sides were smashed into pieces. Even the entire pyramid seemed to shake twice. In fact, with the current strength of the sea dragon clone, as long as Immerse was willing, he could smash the entire pyramid into pieces at any time. However, in order not to destroy the overall structure of the pyramid, he swam in through the passageway. Next, Immerse destroyed 5 more mechanisms in a row. Only then did he reach the center of the pyramid. Here, there was another passageway that diagonally led downwards. The passageway looked pitch black. However, Immerse could detect that at the end of the pitch-black passageway was a vast world. Without any melancholy, he continued along the passageway. During this time, he broke through 3 more mechanisms in a row. Only then did he reach the end of the pitch-black passageway. When he arrived here, he suddenly felt enlightened. He saw that this was a huge valley. Corals grew everywhere in the valley. And almost all the corals were faintly fluorescent. They were red, green, yellow, and purple. They looked like neon lights at night in the city. However, they were far from being as tacky as neon lights. The light on these coral bushes was softer. Immerse was secretly surprised. Could this be the legendary undersea garden? In his previous life, he had once read a report about the undersea garden on the internet. It was said that a large coral bush was found at the bottom of the sea, and it looked like an undersea garden. However, the undersea garden that Immerse saw in front of him was even more gorgeous than in the report. He controlled the 20-meter-long sea dragon clone and used his dragon will to investigate the surroundings as he slowly swam forward. Soon, he discovered that this coral forest was more than 70 kilometers long. In this 70-kilometer-long coral forest, there were dozens of creatures. These creatures all had human heads and fish bodies. Their gills had evolved into fish gills. However, their bodies were not all like mermaids. Some had bodies like octopuses. Some were like seahorses. Some had bodies like huge whales. In short, all kinds of undersea animals had human heads. After Immerse's blood dragon's eye, these animals had all reached level 10 super mutated. However, their species column did not show that they were beasts. Instead, it was a general term, mermaid. Immerse shook his head inwardly. Alright, these mermaids had completely overturned his beautiful imagination of the word mermaid. At this moment, a few nearby mermaids with squid bodies had already discovered Immerse. Chapter 233. After discovering Immerse's sea dragon clone, the cuttlefish merman immediately swam towards it. Each cuttlefish merman was more than 300 meters long. But on this 300-meter-long body, there was a normal human head. It looked extremely out of place. As they swam towards Immerse, they kept making gurgling sounds from their throats. With the help of the foreign language proficiency skill, Immerse could easily master any language on Earth. At this moment, he heard the meaning of these giant cuttlefish mermen. There's an intruder. Kill it. It looks like a strange fish without any intelligence. At this point, a cuttlefish merman opened his mouth. Puff! A ball of jet black liquid spurted out. It went straight towards Immerse's sea dragon clone. When this mass of black liquid passed by the seaweed next to it, the seaweed continued to emit black bubbles and began to rot rapidly. It turned out that the liquid spurted out by the cuttlefish merman was extremely corrosive. However, this extremely corrosive was only relative to the creatures on Earth. For the sea dragon clone, it was not worth mentioning at all. How dare you show off your meager skills in front of an expert? Immerse almost said, "Great mighty heavenly dragon," in his heart. Then, a mouthful of strong acid was spat out. Puff! A mass of dark green liquid spurted out. In just an instant, the fan-shaped area with a radius of 1 kilometer in front of him was shrouded in the strong acid breath. At this moment, not only was the seaweed in this area rapidly rotting, even the rocks in the surroundings were bubbling and melting rapidly. At the same time, the seawater within this area was constantly boiling. As for the cuttlefish mermen, the skin on the surface of their bodies was quickly corroded, revealing the flesh and blood inside. Then, the flesh and blood were also corroded, revealing the bones inside. The mouths of their human heads kept letting out mournful screams. Hiss, hiss, but this scream only lasted for a few seconds before their heads were corroded until only residue was left. The commotion here quickly attracted the other mermen. The 2 hammerhead shark mermen hurriedly sent a signal to the other mermen. There's an intruder. There's an intruder. All merfolk, support them immediately. In less than a moment, more than 50 mermaids emerged from the corals of the entire valley. Some of them were only about 10 meters tall. Some of them were 400 to 500 meters tall. There was even an electric eel mermaid that was 1,000 meters long. On the 1,000-meter-long body, there was only a small human head. It looked extremely strange. On its head, there was a pair of cherry-like antennae. The 2 antennae flashed with blue light. Immerse aimed at the 1,000-meter-long electric eelman. He swung his tail vigorously and swam towards the electric eelman at full speed. The electric eel made a few squeaking sounds from its mouth. Immerse understood what he meant. You don't know the meaning of death. Soon, when the 2 of them were only 100 meters apart, the pair of antennae on the electric eel's forehead shone brightly with blue light. A bolt of lightning shot straight at the sea dragon clone. This lightning bolt had a diameter of more than 2 meters. Even a level 10 super mutant beast would be seriously injured if it was electrocuted, if not killed. However, the sea dragon clone was indeed level 10, but it was not a super mutant beast. It was a whole realm higher than a super mutant beast. It was a desolate beast. Buzz buzz, the electric current hit the sea dragon clone in an instant. Immerse only felt a burst of numbness all over his body, as if he had just taken out a sauna. He felt comfortable all over. Comfortable. Immerse said. When the electric eelman saw this, a look of horror flashed in his eyes. One had to know that electric eelmen were basically unstoppable in this sea area. Even the powerful killer whales and mermaids had to retreat in front of the electric eel mermaids. After all, as long as they shot out an electric current, even a killer whale would be paralyzed and unable to move. But now, his electric current did not have the slightest effect on this little strange fish. Thinking of this, the electric eelman's 1,000-meter-long body swam over. He directly surrounded the sea dragon clone. Then, from beginning to end, electric current flashed. And in the middle of the encirclement, a huge electric net was formed. In this electric net, electric currents more than 2 meters in diameter flowed rapidly like giant pythons. Buzz buzz buzz, buzz buzz buzz, these electric currents kept hitting the sea dragon clone. Immerse was once again electrocuted until his whole body was numb. Comfortable. Immerse said in his heart. This was the most comfortable feeling he had ever felt in his life. It was as if he had a full-body massage. The electric eelman saw that this small strange fish not only did not feel the slightest pain under his electric current, but also twisted his body comfortably. This made him even more horrified. What kind of monster was this? In horror, he turned around and wanted to escape. Immerse originally wanted to let him electrocute him a few more times, but he didn't expect him to want to escape. He shook his head helplessly. His body quickly grew in size amidst the crackling sounds. In the next moment, his body reached nearly 200 meters long. He opened his huge mouth and directly bit the electric eelman's tail. Crack, the tail was bitten off. The electric eelman opened his mouth and screamed in pain, constantly twisting his body. The area within a kilometer was suddenly stirred up into a turbid mess. But with Immerse's strength, he easily suppressed this electric eelman. He pressed him under his body and then continued to devour him, bite by bite. More than half an hour later, the electric eelman was devoured by him. At this time, the other hundreds of mermaids around had already surrounded him. Immerse moved his mind, and more than 50 tentacles instantly grew on the sea dragon clone's body. The suction cups on each tentacle had an extremely strong suction force. Those mermaids at the bottom of the sea were sucked into the suction cups one after another. Then, from the suction cups, a sanguisurincus stretched out and directly pierced into the suction cups. It absorbed the blood of these mermaids. These mermaids kept struggling. But no matter how they struggled, they could never escape the control of the suction cups. In just a few minutes, these hundreds of mermaids were all devoured by the sea dragon clone. In this way, Immerse slaughtered more than 500 mermaids in just 1 hour. Nearly half of the mermaids in the entire valley were slaughtered. The remaining 500 or so mermaids, seeing how ferocious this strange fish was, hurriedly fled forward in horror. But how could their speed compare to the speed of the sea dragon clone? Immerse controlled the sea dragon clone and chased forward while devouring these mermaids. A moment later, he chased to the end of the valley. There were traces of buildings there. The first thing that caught his eye were the 2 tall stone statues on both sides. Chapter 234. Each of the 2 huge stone statues was more than 500 meters tall. They were like 2 door gods. There were many small holes on the stone statues, which were obviously eroded by seawater over countless years. What surprised Immerse was that these 2 stone statues were not mermaids. They were humans. After passing through the gate between these 2 door gods, there was a seemingly very wide area. There were large areas of buildings here. Houses, bridges, stone gates, stone roads. There was also a stone pyramid that was 1,000 meters tall. Under the reflection of the surrounding coral bushes, this huge city looked full of vicissitudes after the baptism of time. Immerse's heart moved slightly. Legend had it that in history, there was a civilization called the Atlantis civilization. Later, it suddenly disappeared overnight. Some people said that the entire Atlantis sank into the sea. Could it be that this was it? Those mermaids fled into the city and quickly hid in these buildings. Of course, the mermaids were very large in size. Even if they wanted to hide, they could only hide in those tall buildings. There were also some mermaids who fled to the pyramid in the center of the city. They crawled on the ground in front of the pyramid. They kept praying loudly. "Great King of Atlantis, please save your people. Great King of Atlantis, there are outsiders who are slaughtering your people. Please save your people." At this time, the huge pyramid, with a rumbling sound, cracked to both sides. From it, a mermaid swam out. This mermaid was completely different from the other mermaids who were ugly, strange, and ferocious. This was a female mermaid. The upper body was completely a woman's body. The lower body was a fish tail. This was completely consistent with the legendary image of a mermaid. This woman, whether it was her figure or appearance, was absolutely 1 in a million. Her pair of eyes, as blue as the sea, seemed to be able to hook people's souls. She looked at the group of mermaids below and said, "My people, as your king, I, the Queen of Atlantis, will not let any creature hurt you." All the hundreds of mermen below lowered their heads even more. "Thank you, Queen." The Queen of Atlantis shifted her gaze away from her people. He turned to Immerse's sea dragon clone. When her gaze fell on the sea dragon clone, a cold murderous intent flashed in her azure eyes. He let out a roar. "Hiss! You dare to harm my Atlantean people? Die!" As she spoke, cracking sounds could be heard from her body. Her body also began to expand rapidly. It grew longer and thicker. In the end, her body reached a length of 1,500 meters. Moreover, after she grew bigger, her head didn't stay the same like other fish. Instead, his head grew longer as well. Immerse was slightly surprised. During battle, their bodies would enlarge in size in order to increase their combat power to the limit. Normally, his body would shrink several times or even 100 times in order to reduce his energy consumption. This was a skill that could only be mastered by desolate beasts. He immediately used the blood dragon's eyes to look at the Queen of Atlantis. Species, Submermaid, Level 10 Ultra Mutated Wild Beast, Abilities, Extreme Charm, thousands of sharp teeth. It turned out that this wasn't a real mermaid. It was a subspecies of mermaid that only had a portion of human bloodline. At the same time, Immerse knew that she was only a level 10 ultra-mutated beast. Although she had mastered a certain level of desolate beast abilities, due to the restrictions on Earth, she would never be able to reach the level of a desolate beast. Immerse had experienced the extreme charm skill once before. With the blood dragon's eyes, these were basically floating clouds in his eyes. As for what thousands of sharp teeth were, Immerse didn't know. However, no matter how powerful a level 10 ultra-mutated beast skill was, it was nothing in front of a level 10 desolate beast. The mermaid's huge head opened its huge mouth. And the huge mouth opened wider and wider. In the end, not only did it crack to the back of her head, but it also cracked to her neck. Continuing down, her entire upper body cracked open. The crack was filled with 2 rows of uneven, yellowed teeth. There was still some raw meat hanging between the teeth. She looked ferocious and disgusting. Compared to her previous appearance, it was a complete contrast. This huge mouth directly swallowed Immerse's sea dragon clone. Immerse sneered in his heart. He controlled the sea dragon clone, stretched its body, and floated there. He allowed the mermaid to devour it. The mermaid's huge mouth directly bit the sea dragon clone's neck. The 2 rows of sharp intersecting teeth were each more than 2 meters long and looked like 2 rows of sharp swords. Crack, under this bite, the sea dragon clone didn't move at all. The mermaid was slightly shocked. What was going on? With her sharp teeth, even a rock could be easily crushed. She couldn't bite this strange fish's body. Immerse was controlling the sea dragon clone at this moment. Its 2 front claws, which were as thick as tree trunks, grabbed both sides of the mermaid's big mouth. Then, he tore it forcefully. Hiss! It actually tore open another 500 meters of the mermaid's big mouth. It tore her upper jaw, along with her entire head, off her body. Blood immediately gushed out. It spread out in the sea water. The mermaid didn't even have the chance to struggle before she was torn in half by Immerse. Instant kill. And he didn't use any skills. He killed the Queen of Atlantis in one fell swoop with brute force. All the mermaids present were horrified when they saw this. Their great Queen of Atlantis died just like that. And she was killed by this strange fish in one blow. How was this possible? The Queen of Atlantis had lived for hundreds of years and was the most powerful existence in the entire sea. How could she be killed in one blow? But now the reality was in front of them, and they had to believe it. At this moment, they looked at Immerse with fear and despair in their eyes. In their eyes, the Queen of Atlantis was a godlike existence. And now, even their god had been killed by this strange fish in one blow. What else could they do? Run? Resist? What a joke. Seeing that these mermaids had all lost the will to resist, Immerse immediately unleashed thousands of tentacles and swallowed them all. At this point, Immerse had already devoured more than 1,000 mermaids. At the same time, in his mind, he said, "System, sign in." The system's voice quickly sounded, and it was still so pleasant to the ear. Sign in successful. Sign in location, Atlantis, sign in reward, Dragon Palace upgrade. After Immerse checked this reward, he was overjoyed. After the upgrade of the Dragon Palace, the benefits it brought were far beyond Immerse's imagination. Chapter 235. After Immerse checked in at Atlantis, his reward was the upgrade of the Dragon Palace. He checked the reward in his mind. Virtual Dragon Palace upgraded to Level 2. Level 2 Virtual Dragon Palace generates virtual arrow towers and virtual city walls. The virtual city wall could resist any attack below LV-10, including LV-10 hunters. The virtual arrow tower could cause damage to any creature below LV-10, including LV-10 hunters. The automatic attack range is 10 kilometers. Attack and defense are passive skills, automatically triggered when encountering the enemy's attack and defense. At the same time, Immerse saw a scene in his mind. Around the virtual dragon palace of base C1, it was like building a house in the game. Virtual bricks were quickly piled up. Virtual stones were quickly piled up as well. Just a few minutes later, a virtual city wall was built around the entire virtual dragon palace. This virtual city wall was 10 times taller than the physical city wall around the base. It reached a height of 100 meters. Arrow towers were quickly built on top of these virtual city walls. These arrow towers were more than 200 meters tall. The entire virtual city wall was like a ring-shaped mountain range. The arrow towers above were like mountain peaks. There were no less than 100 virtual arrow towers like this. They covered the entire base. Immerse looked at these and was overjoyed. After the upgrade of the virtual dragon palace, any creature below level 10 hunters could not cause damage to the virtual dragon palace. And if they dared to attack the virtual dragon palace rashly, the virtual dragon palace's counterattack would be absolutely awesome. As long as the enemy did not send any hunters, the rest of the hunters would die. This effect was too heaven-defying. Of course, others could not see such a heaven-defying virtual dragon palace. In their eyes, there were no tall city walls or arrow towers at all. Now that he had this level 2 virtual dragon palace, Immerse could not help but have an idea in his mind. Previously, he thought that when he was strong enough, he would go to the Flaming Land to explore. They dared to treat Earth as a hunting ground, so he would let them know who the prey was. But it would take a long time to realize this idea. But now that he had this virtual dragon palace, he could go to the Flaming Land directly. He could use Hunting Island 1 as his base. He could use this to develop and strengthen his forces. And now on the entire Earth, there were fewer and fewer places where one could sign in. The Flame Beginning continent was undoubtedly a brand new check-in map. Thinking of this, Immerse couldn't help but feel a little excited. However, with his cautious nature, it was naturally impossible for him to go now. At the very least, he had to find the dragon ruins at the bottom of the sea to see if he could raise his strength to the level of a hunter. Thinking of this, he shrunk his body and observed the surrounding terrain. After investigating, he found that the surrounding terrain was almost exactly the same as the terrain on the map he had obtained before. Except for the underwater city, the other mountains and ravines were almost copied from the map. The location of the dragon ruins was marked on the pyramid that the mermaid had just come out from. Immerse was overjoyed, and immediately came to the top of the pyramid. Looking down from here, he saw a pitch-black cave entrance. The cave entrance was huge. The diameter was almost exactly the same as the bottom side of the pyramid. The existence of the pyramid seemed to be to block the entrance of the cave. Immerse used his draconic psyche to investigate the cave. The cave was still empty, and there was nothing inside. After carefully probing the inside a few more times with his draconic psyche and confirming that there was no danger inside, Immerse controlled the sea dragon avatar and swam into the cracked pyramid. Then he entered the cave from the bottom of the pyramid. This was an oval-shaped cave. The longest part of the cave was more than 5,000 meters long. The widest part was more than 2,000 meters. On the other side of the cave, there seemed to have been a huge exit in the past. But because of the changes in the Earth's crust, the cave entrance had completely collapsed. Immerse looked around for a moment and sighed in his heart. "I finally found it," he said in his mind. "System, sign in." The system's voice immediately sounded frowny face. "Sign in successful. Sign in location, dragon ruins at the bottom of the sea. Sign in reward, 1, underwater roaming, 2, water dragon's breath, 3, a wisp of draconic psyche, 4, a drop of titan dragon blood." This should have been the lair of a water dragon in the past. This time, he directly received 4 rewards. Immerse glanced at it and roughly knew what the fourth reward was for. However, he still suppressed the excitement in his heart and finished reading the first two skills. Underwater roaming was obviously a skill that could allow him to survive in the water. With this skill, Immerse's main body could also survive in the water for a long time. Water Dragon's breath could spit out energy water pillars. In terms of destructive power, it was far inferior to Flame Dragon's breath. But under certain circumstances, it was still very useful. The third Draconic Psyche was needless to say. He had obtained a wisp of Draconic Psyche before, and now with this wisp of Draconic Psyche, his Draconic Psyche had reached the peak of level 3. As long as he obtained a little more Draconic Psyche, he would be able to reach level 4. This already made Immerse happy. After reading these 3 rewards, Immerse shifted his gaze to the third reward. His heart was beating faster than usual. Titan Dragon Blood, after swallowing, it can help the host break through the limit and reach the Hunter realm. And obtain the corresponding skills. F***ck, it finally appeared. Immerse couldn't help but feel his heart beat faster. He had always been cautious and liked to plan before acting. At this time, he couldn't help but directly put the Sea Dragon clone into his personal reservoir. The next moment, his consciousness returned to his main body. At this time, it was late at night in the base. There was no one around. Everything was silent. Immerse's Draconic Psyche probed again. After confirming that it was completely safe. With a thought in his mind, he took out the drop of Titan Dragon Blood. This drop of blood was contained in a bottle only the size of a finger. He opened the bottle cap. He saw that this drop of blood was a clear bright red. It rolled in the bottom of the bottle. It was like a drop of water rolling on a lotus leaf. Just by looking at this drop of blood, one could feel that it contained an extremely majestic energy. This majestic energy was much greater than the energy in the blood dragon wings on Immerse's back. In the past, it was the Titan Dragon Bloodline modification liquid. But now, this drop was directly the Titan Dragon Blood. One could imagine that the two were not on the same level at all. Immerse suppressed the excitement in his heart and poured this drop of blood-red liquid into his mouth. This drop of liquid melted as soon as it entered his mouth. It turned into an extremely large amount of energy and rushed to all of his meridians at an extremely fast speed. It followed all of his meridians and rushed to every cell in his body. Chapter 236. The energy contained in a small drop of liquid was unimaginably huge. At first, it flowed along his meridians. But soon, the small meridians could not contain the huge amount of energy. Thus, the huge amount of energy began to break through the barriers between the cells in his body. The huge amount of energy rampaged through Immerse's body like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. It seemed to want to tear apart, break through, and destroy the cells in Immerse's body. The pain of his body being torn apart continued to come. Only now did Immerse realize how important the modification liquid was to his body. If not for the modification liquid, he would have exploded into a bloody mist when this huge amount of energy entered his body. At this time, although Immerse's body was in intense pain, he could still barely withstand the terrifying energy. But soon, his body had reached its limit. The violent energy seemed to be about to tear his body apart. At this moment, the dragon claws on his arms condensed. The Titan Dragon breastplate on his body had also condensed. In this way, the pain in his arms and torso was alleviated a little. It was also at this moment that his legs began to slowly become thicker and longer. In the end, they actually became 3 times longer and 3 times thicker than before. Furthermore, tough and shiny black scales had also grown out of his legs. His feet were also 3 times larger than before. And accompanied by the sound of bones cracking, there was a continuous sound. His feet gradually turned into a pair of dragon claws. At this time, except for his head, his arms, legs, and torso had all turned into dragon form. Of course, overall, the dragon form, at this time was not the true dragon form. It was equivalent to a dragon's body in human form. In this form, Immerse's physical strength was extremely terrifying. Whether it was his attack or defense, they were all greatly enhanced. Gradually, the pain in Immerse's body slowly subsided. And in his mind, the image of the giant dragon appeared again. It was still the shadow of the giant dragon. But this time, the shadow was more solid than the previous few times. When the giant dragon looked at Immerse only felt a sense of horror in his heart, as if he was looking at an abyss demon. The dragon was several meters long. It streaked across the sky, blotting out the sun. And the world below the giant dragon was a continuous stretch of mountains. However, there was no longer any vegetation on the mountain. Scorched earth was everywhere. From time to time, they could see smoke and fire filling the air. In this smoke-filled mountain, there were corpses of other dragons everywhere. There were blue, purple, red, and black dragons of all colors. They could be as large as a few thousand meters or as small as a few dozen meters. It was clear that a war between dragons had just taken place here. Immerse still wanted to take a closer look, but the giant dragon in the sky had already retracted its wings and swooped down. Again. Immerse was speechless. Although he had already experienced such a situation several times. But every time he experienced it, it felt like his first time. After all, when it first appeared, it was just a blurry shadow. And now, it was becoming more and more realistic. Therefore, even someone as strong as Immerse could not help but tremble slightly. He wanted to escape, but he found that his legs were already frozen in place. In the end, he could only watch as the huge dragon opened its cave-like mouth and completely swallowed him. Only then did Immerse suddenly open his eyes. At this time, he was about 3 meters tall. He was like a giant. Fortunately, the roof of the corpse farm was about 3.5 meters high. Otherwise, his head would have hit the roof at this time. His whole body, except for his head, was covered with a layer of black scales. It looked very visually striking. Of course, this was not his real body. It was just his skill. He took a look at his attributes in his mind. Name, Immerse, Level 1 Scavenger, Level 3 Long Nian, Evolution Path, Titan Dragon. Phew, Immerse let out a long breath. His eyes shone brightly. Because of excitement, his cheeks were a little red. Finally, he had become a scavenger. When he was a level 10 Great Hunter, he could already kill a level 5 scavenger. Now that he had become a level 1 scavenger, with his strength, killing a level 6 scavenger should not be a problem. At this time, he moved his mind and withdrew his skill. His whole body returned to the body of a human. Looking at his naked lower body, Immerse shook his head helplessly. If only he could borrow a pair of pants from Green Fatty. Now that he had evolved into a scavenger, according to the previous plan, Immerse should go to the Flaming Land. But when he signed in before, he obtained a strand of dragon will, which made Immerse's dragon will almost reach the peak of level 3. This made him temporarily put the plan to go to the Flaming Land on hold. Because before, the plague dragon had divided his dragon will into tens of thousands and attached to many people. Now he just had to find a way to find those people and devour the plague dragon's dragon will in their bodies. Then his dragon will would definitely be promoted to level 4. With level 4 dragon will, his combat strength would increase by a lot. At that time, it would be safer to go to the Flaming Land. With Immerse's current dragon will, as long as he was within 1,000 meters of people with dragon will, he would be able to sense the dragon will in their bodies. Early the next morning, Immerse was in the entire base, sensing the dragon will in these people's bodies. With his speed, he quickly circled around the base. In the end, he found more than 10 people with dragon will in their minds. Of course, compared to Immerse's dragon will, the dragon will in these people's bodies was very weak. Immerse came in front of a middle-aged woman. His dragon will could easily sense the plague dragon's dragon will in that person's body. The middle-aged woman looked at Immerse with a slight fear in her eyes. This was the reaction everyone had when facing Immerse. Immerse did not say much. He directly wrapped the woman with dragon wool to prevent the plague dragon's dragon wool from escaping. Then a part of dragon wool entered the woman's body and directly invaded her brain. At this moment, the plague dragon's dragon wool that had been deeply hidden in the woman's body finally knew what Immerse was going to do. He sneered. "Lowly human, you want to devour my dragon will? How dare you show off your insignificant skill in front of an expert?" As he spoke, his dragon will suddenly expanded and tried to devour Immerse's dragon will. Unfortunately, his dragon will had already gone through 10,000 years, so there was not much left. Later on, it split into tens of thousands of strands, so there was not much left. Moreover, Immerse's dragon will devour skill ignored the opponent's level. Therefore, Immerse easily devoured the plague dragon's dragon will. Chapter 237. After Immerse devoured this person, he could feel that the dragon will in his body seemed to have increased a little. Although it wasn't much, with the strength of his dragon will, he would be able to detect the slightest change. The middle-aged woman didn't know what Immerse had done. Immerse only said indifferently, "You can go now." The middle-aged woman immediately heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly said, "Yes, Mr. Immerse." She turned around and quickly left. Immerse looked at the second old man. The plague dragon's dragon will in the old man's body also detected that Immerse had devoured the plague dragon's dragon will in the woman's body. He couldn't help but be shocked. He quietly shrank into the old man's body and didn't dare to move at all. He tried to use this method to avoid Immerse's devouring. But it was obvious that he was too naive. Immerse's dragon will easily entered the old man's body and invaded his brain. Only now did the plague dragon's dragon will in the old man's body realize that there was no way to avoid it. It immediately launched a frenzied counterattack against Immerse's dragon will. However, in front of Immerse's dragon will, his dragon will was like starlight compared to the moon. In the end, in less than 5 seconds, Immerse devoured this dragon will. At this moment, the plague dragon's dragon will in the other people's bodies saw this and hurriedly swarmed forward, wanting to completely devour Immerse. But it was obvious that they were wrong. Even if they attacked together, it would be of no help. Dragon will devour regardless of level. It was no joke. When their dragon will invaded Immerse's body, they realized how stupid they were. It turned out that Immerse's dragon will had already set up an inescapable net in his body, waiting for them to come in. In the end, their dragon wills were all devoured by Immerse. In the next 3 days, Immerse went to all the bases in the world. In these bases, he found more than 300 people with dragon wills. Although the plague dragon's dragon will had split into thousands of strands and hidden in the human body. But after so many years, there were always people who died unexpectedly. There were also people who died because they couldn't withstand the plague dragon's dragon will. In the end, there were only 300 people left. Fortunately, when Immerse devoured the dragon intent of the 237th person, he felt the dragon intent in his mind grow at an extremely fast speed. This time, the breakthrough of dragon thoughts was not like the tearing pain that his body had to endure when he broke through to become a hunter. On the contrary, it was because he had been using dragon will for many years that he was extremely familiar with it. The entire breakthrough process seemed to have come naturally. Within a short 5 minutes, Long Nian had already broken through. At that instant, he could feel his dragon will spreading across the place. It actually covered an area with a radius of 200 kilometers. Breaking through one level would increase the distance by 50 kilometers. He was much stronger than the average Psyche master. One had to know that for an ordinary telekinesis master, every time they broke through a level, their telekinesis range would only increase by 10 kilometers. At the same time, Immerse learned a new skill through this breakthrough. The power of this skill could only be greater than the dragon will meteor. Moreover, the range of this skill far exceeded that of the dragon will meteor. Next, Immerse devoured the draconic will in the remaining 100 or so people. 3 days later, he returned to the base. Now, almost everything in the world had been settled. He did not intend to kill the remaining infected creatures. He would leave these infected creatures as sparring partners for the humans on Earth. That night, in the base, he opened his mouth and signed in. System, specify dragon blood, double the sign in. The system's voice sounded. Specify dragon blood, it can only be doubled each time. After the Dragon Palace was upgraded, the sign and reward can be quadrupled each time. Stacking the two rewards can get 8 times the reward. PFFF, Immerse almost spat out a mouthful of blood in his heart. He couldn't help but shout in his heart, wasn't it 10,000 times before? The system's voice replied. The energy contained in dragon blood is too huge. With the host's physical strength, swallowing 10,000 drops at a time is simply unbearable. Moreover, dragon blood is a treasure. Every drop of sign-in requires 10 million evolution points. With the host's current evolution points of more than 70 billion, he can only sign in 7,000 drops. F***CK. Immerse couldn't help but curse. This was too much of a scam. 1 drop of sign-in requires 10 million. It was really too much. However, in order to become stronger, not to mention 10 million, even if it was 100 billion, he had to grit his teeth and bear it. The system continued. This sign-in requires 20 million evolution points. Do you want to sign in? Yes. Immerse almost cried. Sign in successful. Sign in reward, 2 drops of Titan dragon blood. Soon, Immerse's consciousness focused on the system backpack. The next moment, he saw 8 bottles of Titan dragon blood in the system backpack. This made Immerse's heartache a lot less. Fortunately, the Dragon Palace was upgraded to level 2. The Dragon Palace's bonus for sign-in didn't consume evolution points. That was why he was able to get 6 drops of dragon blood in a single sign-in. Thinking of this, his heart felt a lot better. He opened the bottle cap and swallowed the 8 drops of Titan dragon blood. He felt that the energy in his body had increased a lot. With this energy, the power of the energy weapon unleashed during battle would definitely be extremely shocking. In the Flaming Origin continent, energy weapons were too strong. The bodies of the hunters couldn't bear it at all. Therefore, they often had to transform a part of their body into a strong metal material so that they could withstand the impact of energy. However, Immerse didn't need to transform at all. His body had been transformed by the modification liquid, and his strength had long surpassed that of ordinary hunters. In addition, now that he had dragon blood in his body, the strength of his body had greatly increased again. Therefore, his body could easily withstand the impact of energy. In the next few months, Immerse planned to continue sign-in until his level reached level 2 before going to the Flaming Origin continent. However, his evolution points were a little tight just to sign in for a few months. Therefore, he once again condensed his virus clones. With his current strength, he could already condense 100 virus clones. Moreover, the strength of each virus clone had reached level 10 Great Hunter and level 1 Long Nianshi. With such strength, he could do whatever he wanted on Earth. Immerse scattered these virus clones all over the world and let them kill infected creatures for him to obtain evolution points. One had to know that there were trillions of infected creatures on Earth. If these infected creatures were killed, the evolution points obtained would probably be in the tens of trillions. Therefore, he didn't have to worry about not having enough evolution points. Just like this, he signed in until 3 months. On this day, after Immerse swallowed another 8 drops of blood, his body changed again. Chapter 238. He stayed in the base for 3 months. Immerse stayed in the base for 3 months. During these 3 months, he was with Happy every day. The two of them were almost inseparable. Immerse's daily life was basically taken care of by Happy. Now, some of the vegetables planted in the base could be harvested. The people in the base prioritized the best vegetables and sent them to the zombie farm. Although Happy's culinary skills could not be compared to the chefs before the apocalypse, some of the home-cooked dishes had a different taste. Until now, Happy still thought that she did not know how to do anything other than work in the zombie farm. Other people were afraid of the power of the Oracle, so no one dared to mention it in front of Happy. Besides going out with Immerse, Happy did not leave the zombie farm much. Therefore, she did not know that she was an existence that even Immerse could not stop when she went crazy. At the same time, during these 3 months, the small monk became very familiar with the control of the mecha. Now, everyone knew that the small monk was a genius in mecha piloting. Not only was he very talented in piloting the mecha. Furthermore, his talent in the daily maintenance and repair of mecha was something that no one else could compare to. On the 3rd day after getting the mecha, he dismantled the mecha from head to toe and scattered it all over the floor. When Guojutao, who came to inspect, entered the room and saw the parts on the floor, he was so angry that he almost had a heart attack. Mr. Imo handed over such a high-tech mech to you, but you disassembled it into parts in less than 3 days. Are you out of your mind? On the 7th day, the small monk completely restored the mecha. After dismantling and reassembling the mecha, his understanding of the mecha had far surpassed the theoretical knowledge in books. He could operate it more smoothly. 2 months later, Immerse gave the 1,000 spider drones to the small monk. After the small monk got the 1,000 spider drones, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. Although he was only a level 10 psychic, he was still a level 10 psychic. However, with his strength, he could control the mecha and cooperate with the spider drones. Even if he ran into a level 10 scavenger, he could fight against them. Now, Immerse's strength could crush a level 8 scavenger. His strength had no limit when he went crazy. The little monk could fight against level 10 scavenger with his mecha. In the Fire Dragon continent, this kind of strength could already be considered a strong team. However, Immerse felt that this was not enough. So he signed in for 3 months. Finally, his strength was promoted to LV2. After reaching level 2, he was not very excited about his own strength. What he was most excited about was the Sea Dragon clone. With a thought, his consciousness entered the body of the Sea Dragon clone. He took a look. Species, Mosasaurus. Level 2 mutated dire beast. Ability, evolution by devouring, dragon psychic attack, lightning attack. The Sea Dragon clone had devoured too many level 10 mutated beasts before. He should have advanced a long time ago. However, Immerse had been stuck at level 10 Great Hunter for a long time. Therefore, the Sea Dragon clone was stuck at level 10. When Immerse had broken through to become a scavenger, the Sea Dragon clone had naturally been promoted to a level 1 mutant dire beast. Now that Immerse was a level 2 scavenger, the Sea Dragon clone had also become a level 2 mutant dire beast. A level 2 mutant dire beast was equivalent to a level 2 scavenger. And in the entire Flaming Land, scavenger hunters were only a small part of the population. Even in a certain force or a certain academy, there were only a few scavenger hunters. Therefore, once one became a scavenger, one would become a true powerhouse. Once one became a scavenger, one could rope in a group, establish a gang, and occupy a mountain. And now, the strength of the Sea Dragon clone was equivalent to a level 2 scavenger. Immerse finally had the confidence to go to the Flaming Land. The Sea Dragon clone, the Oracle, Happy, the Cheetah Mecha, all of these made Immerse full of confidence. Moreover, these were not his greatest trump cards. His greatest trump card was actually in the Flaming Land. Since he was ready to go to the Flaming Land, the next thing was to consider who to take with him. One person or a few people against the entire continent sounded very hot-blooded, but it was not very realistic after all. On the contrary, Immerse planned to move the entire base directly to the first hunting island. Even if they could do some logistics work, it would be good enough. With them producing food, cooking, washing clothes, and so on, he could still live a life on the Flaming Land. And now that the Dragon Palace had been upgraded, their levels would also increase quickly. In the past 3 months, some scavenger hunters had become level 10 scavenger hunters. There were also those psychokinesis that Immerse had blessed, who had broken through to level 1 psychic masters. He believed that in the near future, the strength of the entire base would definitely not be weaker than the Sandstorm mercenary group. Of course, Immerse did not want to force them. He called Guojutao over and said to him, after experiencing so much, "You must know that there is another world outside of Earth." Guojutao said in a somewhat feminine voice. "Yes. The people in the base are now guessing that there are aliens. The technology on the equipment of more than 2,000 people is not from Earth at all. And Mr. Mo, your cheetah mech is obviously not from Earth." This has made everyone panic. Some people even said that if the aliens attacked Earth in a large scale, even Mr. Mo may not be able to stop them. Hearing this, Immerse smiled faintly. "What do you think?" Guojutao was stunned by the question. To be honest, he was willing to believe Immerse. But if the aliens really did attack, no matter how strong Mr. Mo was, he could not protect the entire Earth alone. Immerse naturally understood what he meant. He said with a smile, "I plan to take people to the alien planet. Whoever is willing to follow me can go with me." Guojutao was directly stunned. The more than 2,000 aliens that appeared last time were all as powerful as gods. Now everyone in the base was secretly praying that those aliens would not come to Earth again. In their opinion, if those aliens were to come again, it would definitely be a disaster for Earth. But Mr. Mo was going to directly attack the alien planet. Was he going crazy? Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Guojutao looked into Immerse's eyes and asked, "Mr. Mo, are you joking?" Immerse did not directly answer him. Instead, he said, "Issue an order that those who are willing to follow me to the alien planet will set off in 3 days. Those who are not willing to go, I won't force them." Guojutao was stunned again. Mr. Mo did not have the slightest intention of joking. So, it was actually true. This. Chapter 239. At Immerse's request, the news that he was going to attack an alien planet quickly spread throughout the base. The entire base was in an uproar. Are there really aliens? Of course. Since Mr. Mo said so, how could it be fake? But can our bodies adapt to going to an alien planet? If the 2,000 people who came last time were aliens, then wouldn't it be too dangerous to go to an alien planet? What are you afraid of? No matter how powerful the aliens are, can they survive the word death? Besides, isn't Mr. Mo here? When the order was given, the people in the base did not do anything. Instead, they were all discussing it. After all, the aliens had just appeared. Many of them could not accept the fact that aliens had appeared. Now, they were asked to go to an alien planet. It was too hasty and sudden. Most of the people who had such thoughts were older. Firstly, they were conservative. Secondly, they were old and did not want to change places. Was it not good to live the rest of their lives in the base? Why did they have to go to other places to suffer? Of course, there were also some young people and some powerful psychokinesis and hunters. They were born with the desire for adventure. They naturally would not miss the opportunity to go to another planet to see it. Secondly, they also knew that with Mr. Mo in front of them, they would encounter less danger. In the end, after 2 days of discussion, almost half of the people were willing to go to the Flaming Land with Immerse. Almost 50,000 people. On the third day, the people who planned to go with Immerse began to pack their things, pack their luggage, and say goodbye to their friends and family. On the third day, Immerse led these people and waved goodbye to the remaining 50,000 people in the base. The remaining 50,000 people in the base did not know that only 2 years later, they would regret it. Of course, this was a story for later. Immerse led the 50,000 people to the coordinates more than 100 kilometers away from the base. Guojutao followed Immerse's instructions and took out the 2,500 watches left by the Sandstorm mercenary group and distributed them to the 2,500 people. Immerse told them how to operate it. Then, he led Happy, the young monk, and the others to click on the teleport button. In the next moment, their figures turned into bluish-white balls of light and disappeared. Just a dozen seconds later, in the teleportation hall of Hunting Island 1 on the Flaming Dawn mainland, more than 2,500 balls of blue and white light slowly condensed into human figures. Immerse and the others were already here. Immerse immediately scanned the area with his dragon telekinesis. Everything within a radius of 200 kilometers could be seen. According to his investigation, all the creatures on the first hunting island had been infected with the Zero virus, including all the plants. As for the humans on Hunting Island number 1, they were naturally infected with the virus Zero. After that, Immerse asked everyone to take off their watches and let Guojutao bring them back to Earth. More than 50,000 people were teleported over in batches. As for Immerse, he brought Happy, the young monk, and the others out of the relocation hall. The moment the door to the teleportation hall opened, they saw a scarlet world outside. The trees were red, and so was the grass. The pond water was red. The mountains in the distance were also red. When the people who followed Immerse saw this scene, they were all secretly shocked. Is this an alien planet? No one answered. Immerse did not say anything and continued to walk out. At this time, there was a small bridge over the Scarlet River in front of them. A few zombies were wandering by the bridge. Their skin and flesh were already somewhat rotten. It seemed that with every step they took, a piece of their skin would fall off. Their grayish-white eyes were filled with some kind of desire. Sensing the arrival of humans, they turned their heads and roared from their throats. Roar, roar, from their mouths, which were almost cracked to the back of their heads. One could even see the remnants of rotten flesh hanging on their teeth. Immerse opened the blood dragon's eye and looked at these zombies. Species, zombie, level 1 evolved zombie. Immerse was slightly stunned. Evolved zombie? The ones on Earth before were mutated zombies, but these were evolved zombies. What was the difference between the two? The system answered and explained, mutated, it may become stronger, or it may become weaker. It is uncertain. Evolved, it will definitely become stronger. Immerse nodded, indicating that he understood. According to his guess, the strength of a level 1 evolved zombie should be about the same as a level 1 hunter. At this moment, the evolved zombies were already unable to endure their hunger and thirst. One of them leaped and had already taken the lead to move. And its target was Immerse, who was at the front. With a leap, it crossed the distance of more than 100 meters. Its speed was far faster than any creature on Earth. Everyone behind Immerse was stunned when they saw this scene. Just by pouncing on this zombie, they could feel how powerful this zombie was. If it were any one of them, the only outcome would be to be instantly killed by this zombie. However, Immerse lifted his right leg and, at the moment when the evolved zombie jumped over, he fiercely chopped it down. Bang! Under the huge force, the level 1 evolved zombie was directly chopped to the ground. Its entire head exploded. Dark red blood splattered in all directions in a radiating manner. And under its body, the stone ground was directly cracked by Immerse's kick. The dark red blood flowed along the cracks and into the ground. The people behind saw how violent Immerse was and were all secretly surprised. Mr. Immo was still as violent and powerful as before. Immerse opened his mouth and reminded the people behind him, these evolved zombies have extremely strong self-healing factors in their bodies. At least 3 headshots are needed to kill them completely. Hearing this, everyone quickly noted it in their hearts. As for why Mr. Immo had only killed this zombie once, it had already died. No one asked. Nonsense, this was Mr. Immo. It was not strange for anything to happen to Mr. Immo. Of course, they didn't know that Immerse's kick just now actually contained energy. In the Flaming Land, ordinary hunters could only release energy through energy weapons. But Immerse was different. He had the blood of the Titan Dragon. The blood of the Titan Dragon had transformed the cells in his body, allowing him to release energy as he wished from any part of his body except for energy weapons. With that kick, a huge amount of energy instantly flowed out of the zombie's body. In an extremely short period of time, all of the zombie's cells were killed. Naturally, it could not be revived. Chapter 240. The next few evolved zombies were either level 1 or level 2. But to Immerse, it didn't make much of a difference. When the evolved zombies were about to pounce on him, Immerse only had to use his mind to control them. In the next moment, the bodies of those evolved zombies suddenly froze on the spot. It was as if they had been immobilized. Then, Immerse's dragons were swept across, and the bodies of those evolved zombies instantly turned into purplish-black powder. Like sand sculptures, they flowed all over the ground. At the same time, Immerse's dragons will expanded. It enveloped everything within a radius of 50 kilometers. Then, with a thought, all the infected animals, plants, and even microorganisms within a radius of 50 kilometers were turned into purplish-black powder. They were blown away at the same time and flowed all over the ground like sand sculptures. In the end, this radius of 50 kilometers was completely covered by purplish-black powder. The people behind Immerse only saw that the originally scarlet world turned purplish-black at an extremely fast speed. In the end, they flowed all over the ground like sand sculptures. Their eyes widened. They knew that Mr. Immerse was very strong, and his telekinesis was also very strong. They had seen Mr. Immerse explode those zombies and even humans into a bloody mist. But now, even these flowers, plants, and trees had turned into purplish-black powder. This was completely beyond their understanding. As far as they knew, only the legendary immortals could change the appearance of the entire world. Naturally, they didn't know that these creatures all had the Zero virus in them. And within each strain of the Zero virus, there was a trace of Immerse's dragon's will. Therefore, as long as he used his dragon's will, all the Zero virus would die. At this time, Immerse used his dragon's will to investigate. From a microscopic perspective, he investigated the changes in the surroundings. He saw that there was no longer a trace of the virus in the purplish-black powder that those creatures had turned into. Instead, after their bodies were decomposed, they became nutrients that could be absorbed by plants. It made this land more fertile. It was more suitable for plants to grow. It was estimated that in at most a month, this land would be covered in green plants. Immerse said to the people behind him, "This land is for you to cultivate." Everyone looked at the purplish-black powder on the ground and were all puzzled. Could such land still be farmed? However, they quickly regained their senses. Since Mr. Immerse said that it could be farmed, then it could be farmed. After that, Immerse led the group forward. After crossing the small bridge and walking for a short distance, they saw a factory-like building. However, this factory looked a little different from the factories on Earth. Although it was a little old, a lot of the paint on the railings, stairs, and door had peeled off. However, in the factory, there were some high-tech things everywhere. Disregarding everything else, just the mechas in the factory were an eye-opener for everyone. Of course, these were not combat mechas. They were just some working mechas used in factories. However, these mechas had all stopped working. Immerse asked the little monk behind him, "Can you make them move?" At this moment, the little monk had a look of surprise on his face. Umitba, what a wonderful thing. He took a few steps forward and carefully observed one of the humanoid mechs. A moment later, he gently pressed the back of the mech's head, and the chip inside popped out. He took out the chip, opened the keyboard at his waist, and put the chip down. His fingers danced quickly on the virtual touch keyboard. A moment later. Soon, he nodded and said, "The chip is intact. It's just that there's no power." In the flaming land, there were 3 sources of power. One was solar energy. The second was crystal energy. The third was zombie energy. Solar energy could be used for normal life, but it was somewhat insufficient to power mechas. Zombie energy was to use the tireless nature of zombies to drive them forward to generate electricity. Previously, the electricity of the entire hunting island was generated by zombies. However, compared to Immerse's ambition, the power generation of zombies was too small. In his vision, he wanted to dominate the entire flaming land in the future. That would require a large number of combat mechas. The super batteries on the combat mechas were equivalent to the power generation of a small power plant. This was naturally not something that a few zombies could do. Therefore, Immerse naturally chose the second one, crystal energy. In the flaming land, there was a kind of ore. Because this ore looked like a crystal, it contained a huge amount of energy. Therefore, it was called crystal energy. Many large factories and military bases used crystal energy as a source of energy. Some of the larger forces had their own crystal energy mines. Of course, Immerse and the others had just arrived, and their strength was not absolutely top-notch. It was naturally impossible to fight for the crystal energy mines. Immerse shook his head slightly. Everything had to start from scratch. Let's move the virtual dragon palace over first. Thinking of this, Immerse said in his mind, "System, move the virtual dragon palace over." The system's voice quickly sounded, "Frowny face, level 2 virtual dragon palace. Requires 50 billion evolution points to move." Pfft, cough 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 cough. Immerse coughed violently a few times. Happy, who was beside him, quickly looked at Immerse with concern. At the same time, he patted Immerse's chest. Immerse shook his head and said, "I'm fine." However, in his heart, he had already complained to the system, 50 billion evolution points, you might as well rob it. The system was silent. Immerse checked his evolution points in his mind. Fortunately, there were still close to 80 billion. Anyway, now that he was in the flaming land, there were wild beasts everywhere. Killing a level 1 desolate beast would give him 100,000 evolution points. It's only 50 billion, I don't care. Let's move. Immerse said. In the next moment, the virtual dragon palace quickly appeared in front of him. It quickly covered an area with a radius of 50 kilometers. At this time, not only was the virtual dragon palace's attack and defense much stronger than before, it was also much larger. In Immerse's mind, the system's notification sounded again, "Frowny face, relocation successful, 50 billion evolution points deducted." Immerse couldn't help but feel pain. He once again complained in his heart, "If you want to deduct, do it secretly. Can you not report it again?" After a while, Immerse led everyone to the factory's power plant. Since those energy sources were not very practical at the moment, he would try to sign in here and see if there was any solution. System, sign in. The system's voice quickly sounded, "Frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, number 1 Hunting Island Power Plant. Sign in reward, energy extraction system, energy extraction system." Immerse was puzzled and focused his attention on the system backpack. Chapter 241. Immerse focused his attention on the energy extraction system in his mind. He saw that it was a very complicated set of equipment. The entire equipment was divided into an extraction chamber, an energy transmission pipeline, a compressor, a filling machine, and so on. Through this set of equipment, the energy in the bodies of desolate beasts, evolved zombies, and even hunters could be extracted for use by the entire base. At the same time, the extracted energy could also be compressed. It could be filled into a super battery. At the same time, there was a construction blueprint in the grid next to the energy extraction system. After Immerse carefully read the introduction of the energy extraction system, he couldn't help but smile. What he lacked really came. He was just worrying about energy, but in the end, he directly signed into the energy extraction system. At this time, Guojutao had already brought another group of people over. Immerse waved at him. Guojutao hurried forward. Immerse took out the construction blueprint from his backpack. He said, "Find an engineer to dismantle this set of power generation equipment, then construct according to the blueprint and install this set of equipment." As he spoke, Immerse moved his mind. He took out the set of energy extraction equipment from his backpack. There were many parts of this set of equipment, and the open space within a kilometer in front of the factory was completely occupied. Guojutao was puzzled. They had just arrived at the factory, so the power generation equipment should be the most important. Why dismantle it? But he didn't ask any more questions. Mr. Mo naturally had his reasons for doing things. So Guojutao nodded and said, yes. Then he turned around and went to look for the engineer in the base. Next, Mo sure led everyone around the entire factory. The various high-tech equipment in the factory made these earthlings gasp in amazement. Especially the large number of robots in the factory with different shapes, which amazed everyone. As long as there was enough energy to make these robots move, then, the labor needed in the base would be very little. This way, they would be able to free up time to train. This made them very glad that they could follow Mr. Mo to an alien planet. They thought that the alien planet was full of powerful aliens, and they would probably face a very fierce battle. They didn't expect that there were no other humans in the place they were teleported to. The ready-made factories, robots, and various mechas were all left for them. As for those powerful creatures, in front of Mr. Mo, they were just a matter of a sweep of his mind. Therefore, they were safer here than on Earth. Then, Mo sure went outside and released the sea dragon clone. There were countless wild beasts on the first hunting island. Previously, these dire beasts were only level 1 to level 3. However, now that they had been infected with the Zero virus, their bodies had been strengthened once again. Many of them had broken through to level 5 or even level 6. It was enough for the sea dragon clone to devour. After doing all this, Mo sure returned to the factory again. He chose the best room and made it his and Happy's bedroom. Now that everything had been arranged properly, what he needed to do next was to increase his strength as quickly as possible. No one else had come to Hunting Island 1 yet. However, Mo sure estimated that it wouldn't be long before someone arrived. The most likely culprit was the Sandstorm mercenary group. One had to know that this mercenary group had over 30,000 people. Their captain and several vice-captains had never returned to Hunting Island 1 since they arrived there. They would definitely come looking for him. In fact, Mo sure was right. In fact, more than a month ago, the only remaining vice-captain of the Sandstorm mercenary group couldn't contact the captain and the other vice-captains, so he had already sent a few people to find him. However, these people's strength was very average. Therefore, when they saw the terrifying scene of infected creatures everywhere on Hunting Island 1, they had no idea what was going on here. He hurriedly fled the place in fear. Time passed slowly, but it also passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, Mo sure and the 50,000 people had been in the flaming land for more than 2 months. In the past 2 months, Mo sure had checked in all over the first hunting ground and obtained a lot of things. Although most of these things didn't increase his individual strength by much. However, they were extremely beneficial to the development of the base. Not to mention other things, just the seeds of various plants and animals alone were enough for him to get a lot of them. Due to the difference in soil, it was impossible for the seeds from Earth to germinate here. However, the seeds of the vegetables, grains, and fruits that Mo sure got from checking in were guaranteed to germinate within 3 days after they were planted. Now, more than 300 acres of land had been reclaimed around the base. On the first 100 acres of land that had been reclaimed, many vegetables had already grown and would ripen in another month. At the same time, the wheat, corn, rice, cotton, and other domestic crops had already sprouted. These crops were originally not in the same season. However, on Hunting Island 1, it was spring all year round. The domestic crops that Mo sure got from the system had no seasonal restrictions at all. Basically, they would mature in half a year. Therefore, no matter what kind of crop it was, it would only take more than 5 months to harvest. Of course, the scale of the entire farm wasn't large at the moment. After all, it was reclaimed from scratch and it relied entirely on manpower. However, as long as the energy extraction equipment was installed, the robots could be driven to work. By then, the scale of the base farm would increase exponentially. On this day, Immerse doubled his check-in and got another 100 kilograms of wheat seeds. Just as he was about to give these wheat seeds to Guojutao had already arrived. His face was full of excitement. With a somewhat feminine voice, he said, "Mr. Mo, the energy extraction equipment has been installed. Now, we just need to catch some infected creatures to test it." Immerse nodded. "Well, let them get ready and test it later." "Yes." Guojutao left. After only 5 minutes, Immerse brought more than 50 evolved zombies and more than 100 evolved zombies to the entrance of the energy extraction chamber. He didn't use iron chains to tie these infected creatures. But these infected creatures were very obedient. One by one, they lowered their heads and followed behind Immerse. It was like a child who had made a mistake at school and was brought home by their parents. Everyone was surprised when they saw this scene. After more than a month, they already knew how powerful these infected creatures were. In front of these infected creatures, these people were basically vegetables. But now, these infected creatures were so obedient in front of Mr. Mo. What was going on? Of course, they didn't know that this was because Immerse had used 2 skills to summon zombies and summon wild beasts. These infected creatures were naturally obedient to Immerse. Chapter 242. Under everyone's surprised gaze, Immerse brought those powerful infected creatures to the door of the extraction cabin. The extraction cabin was a cylindrical, enclosed space with a radius of more than 500 meters. The entire cylindrical wall was transparent. On the wall, there were 10 1-meter diameter pipes connected to a converter in another room through the ceiling. Immerse came to the door of the cabin, and the door opened to both sides. Immerse turned his head and said to the infected creatures behind him, "Go in." Those infected creatures immediately obediently entered the extraction cabin. After the cabin door closed, Immerse nodded to the engineer. "Tua, you can start." The engineer surnamed Bao replied, "Yes." As he spoke, he gave orders to the few people on the control panel behind him. Those people immediately began to get busy. Soon, there was a roar in the extraction cabin. Whoosh, along with the roar, fiery red energy was immediately extracted from those infected creatures. Whether it was the evolved zombies or the desolate beasts. At the same time as the energy in their bodies was extracted. Their bodies were like deflated balloons, quickly shriveling. Soon, only skin and bones were left. When the people outside saw this scene, an inexplicable panic arose in their hearts. They couldn't help but think about what would happen if someone entered the extraction cabin. However, skin and bones were not the end. The strength of the extraction cabin was that it didn't just extract the energy in these creatures. It also included the heat in these creatures' bodies, and even the weak heat emitted from their cells. In the end, when all the energy and heat in the bodies of these infected creatures were extracted, their bodies, including their fur and clothes, turned into black powder. However, this was not the end. At this time, on the floor of the extraction cabin, countless small holes as thick as an arm opened. A strong suction force came from inside, sucking in all the black powder. This black powder would enter the warehouse on the other side of the pipeline, be transported to the farmland, and be sprinkled on the farmland as fertilizer. Everything on the infected creatures was squeezed dry, leaving nothing behind. This was the terrifying part of the extraction cabin. At this time, the energy extracted by the extraction cabin had already passed through the pipeline and arrived at the conversion room on the other side. The energy was converted into electricity through the conversion. Following the order of the contractor, the main power switch in the factory was turned on. The next moment, all the lights in the factory lit up. Whoosh, the more than 50,000 people in the factory immediately boiled with excitement. When they were in the base, they had to conserve electricity. But at least there was still 2 hours of electricity at night. However, after arriving at Hunting Island 1, there was no electricity at all. These days lasted for more than 2 months. Now, it was finally electrified. How could they not be excited? Then, the worker took Mosher to another filling room. In the filling room, there were already 2 cylindrical batteries that had been filled. Each battery was emitting a fiery red fluorescence. The contractor opened the clasp and took out a battery. Her eyes were filled with joy as she said to M.O. Sure, you're right. Mr. M.O., this is the first super battery that we've filled. The power in this battery is enough to last our entire base for a month. M.O. Sure nodded and beckoned to the little monk behind him. The little monk hurried forward. M.O. Sure handed the battery to him. The little monk didn't need M.O. Sure to say anything. He already understood what M.O. Sure meant. He went behind a lifting robot outside the door. He put the super battery into it. Then, he turned on the virtual keyboard and his fingers flew. The next moment, the eyes of the lifting robot suddenly lit up with blue light. Then, he strode towards the empty space in the middle of the factory, where a pile of dismantled waste was. He picked up a stone slab that weighed more than 10 tons and walked out. He threw the stone slab into the filling hopper of the huge grinder that looked like the mouth of a beast. Under the operation of the worker next to him, the grinder began to work. The contractor said, "This super battery is enough for this robot to use for 2 months." Seeing this scene, everyone clapped excitedly. With the super battery, all robots and mechas would be able to move in the future. Their work efficiency would increase by a large margin. For the next 10 days, M.O. Sure would summon hundreds of infected creatures into the base and into the extraction chamber every day. He no longer needed to personally lead the team. People saw these infected creatures enter the base automatically and enter the extraction chamber automatically. All of them admired M.O. Sure from the bottom of their hearts. Only Mr. M.O. could have such a godly method. Soon, all the robots and mechas in the base were equipped with super batteries. Therefore, whether it was production or planting, the efficiency of all aspects was greatly improved. 2 months later, these agricultural robots had already cultivated 5,000 mu of land. This land was enough to produce food for 50,000 people. Now, all aspects of the base were on the right track. Due to the many living robots, people's lives were much more convenient. The super battery produced by the energy extraction system was enough for the entire base to use for a long time. On this day, the contractor came to look for M.O. Sure. He said to M.O. Sure, "Mr. M.O., our current stock of super batteries is enough for the entire base to use for a year. So, I suggest that we can use this excess energy in other aspects. For example, developing technology." M.O. Sure smiled and shook his head. "No, continue to produce batteries." The contractor was stunned and said, "Mr. M.O., if we want to continue to improve the living standards of our base, we must develop technology, otherwise." M.O. Sure interrupted the contractor and said, "Mastering energy is equivalent to mastering everything. As for technology, it's too troublesome to develop. It's better to plunder." Plunder? The contractor was puzzled. He naturally didn't know M.O. Sure's plan. M.O. Sure intended to build a mecha army. If the base wanted to develop, it must improve its strength. At present, it would take at least 10 years for the strength of the humans in the base to reach the level of a desolate hunter, even with the acceleration of the Dragon Palace. Instead of this, it was better to build a mecha army. And the most important thing for a mecha army was sufficient energy. This was the reason why M.O. Sure could produce batteries without limit. As for where to find the mechas or how to produce them, M.O. Sure had a rough idea in his mind. Looking at the blue sky outside the window and the old porcupine flying by, M.O. Sure's heart was full of longing. Imagine thousands of mechas, equivalent to the level of a desolate hunter, sweeping across the sky. How domineering would that be? Chapter 243. The war in the future was ultimately a war of energy. And now, M.O. Sure had mastered energy that was ahead of the flaming continent. One had to know that solar energy and crystalline energy were still commonly used on the flaming origin continent. M.O. Sure's energy extraction technology was completely beyond their plane. With energy, the next step was to develop combat mechas. Mo sure thought that he should be able to obtain the technology and equipment to make combat mechas by signing in at the place where combat mechas were manufactured. But he had just arrived and did not know much about the flaming continent. So he decided to put this plan aside for the time being. Of course, with the little monk's intelligence and the knowledge and experience of the contractor, he also had a ready-made cheetah mech. It was not difficult to come up with the technology to manufacture combat mechas. But Mo sure thought that the system's products would be more advanced than theirs. So he planned to sign in at the place where combat mechas were manufactured when he had the chance in the future. The most important thing now was to increase his and the base's strength as much as possible. It would be safer to sign in at those places when his strength increased. Therefore, for the next period of time, Mo sure signed in every day in the virtual dragon palace. 8 drops of dragon blood every day. He estimated that he would be able to level up again in a year or so. At the same time, he could also get more than 100 million evolution points by summoning infected creatures into the extraction chamber every day. In addition to the evolution points from the sea dragon clone and the clone on Earth. He could get more than 300 million evolution points every day. He estimated that in 2 months, he would get more than 10 billion evolution points. At that time, the system would be able to level up again. On this day, Mo sure had nothing to do, so he was enjoying the scenery of Hunting Island No. 1 with Happy. At the same time, about 25,000 people were flying toward Hunting Island No. 1 on hoverboards. These 25,000 people were all the remaining members of the Sandstorm Mercenary Group. The person in the lead was the only remaining vice captain of the Sandstorm Mercenary Group. Level 7 Hunter, Ding Jicheng. This person was a middle-aged man who looked rough but was actually very careful. That was why Shachi let him stay in the group when he left. Beside him was a young man. This young man had long black hair that was as shiny as a cow's lick. Her white clothes were as clean and white as the new bed sheets in the hospital. Ding Jicheng said flatteringly. Young Master Wu Erden, as the young master of the Black Pack gang, you don't have to come to this remote hunting island. The white-clothed Wu Erdan laughed out loud and said, that's right. How can this young master compare to those hedonistic sons of rich parents? My father didn't send me to Hunting Island 1 to have fun. Ding Jicheng nodded repeatedly. That's right, that's right. Those playboys are not even worthy of carrying young Master Wu Erden's shoes. Erden smiled politely and looked in the direction of Hunting Island No. 1. Tell me more about Hunting Island 1. Ding Jicheng nodded and said, that was about 5 months ago. Our leader, along with a few other vice leaders and 5,000 brothers, came to Hunting Island No. 1. After that, we lost contact. When I sent people over to investigate, they found that this place had already been occupied by infected creatures. Through the surveillance drones, there are almost no living people here. So I thought that our Sandstorm Mercenary Group would join hands with your gang to clean up this Hunting Island No. 1. Don't think that this Hunting Island No. 1 is worthless. In fact, our leader has already said that there is a crystal source vein under this Hunting Island No. 1. And the reserves are very rich. Wu Erdan nodded and asked again, since there is a crystal source vein, why didn't the island owner at that time exploit it? Ding Jicheng smiled and said, young Master Wu Erdan, the strength of Hunting Island No. 1 before was only considered insignificant in the entire continent. Even if they could exploit it, they couldn't defend it. The white-clothed Wu Erdan nodded, you're right. They have the vein but no strength, and our Black Pack gang has the strength but no vein. Now that Hunting Island No. 1 is deserted, we just happen to occupy this hunting island. Speaking of this, he glanced at Ding Jicheng next to him without a trace. He said, don't worry, you found the vein here. Of course, your Sandstorm Mercenary Group will benefit. This was what Ding Jicheng wanted to hear. He quickly put on a smile and nodded. Thank you, young Master Wu Erdan. As they spoke, they had already arrived above Hunting Island No. 1. They didn't choose to land directly. Instead, they released more than 500 drones to explore the island. Through the videos taken by the drones, they found that the island had basically turned blood red. The animals were blood red. The plants were blood red. The mountains were blood red. The water was also blood red. It was as if this was a blood red world. But after a while, 2 drones flew above the center of the island and made a shocking discovery. They saw that there was a circular ground in the middle of the blood red. On this circular ground, there were large patches of green plants. On the blood red island, there was a patch of green land with a radius of 50 kilometers. This made Wu, Dan and Ding Zhiqing very surprised. When the camera zoomed in, they could see that it was basically all crops. In the middle of the fields, there was a large factory. From the sky, they could see that there were robots and humans in both the fields and the factories. When Ding Zhiqing saw this, he was both shocked and terrified. He quickly explained to Wu, Dan next to him, "Young Master Wu, Dan, the last time I sent people to investigate here, they were in a hurry and didn't explore the center. I didn't mean to deceive the Black Pack gang." Wu, Dan smoothed out the corner of his shirt that was fluttering in the wind and smiled kindly. "There's always an accident. It's inevitable. Who do you think they are?" Ding Zhiqing thought for a while and replied, "It should be the original owner of Hunting Island No. 1, Beale. I guess, maybe some kind of virus broke out here and they can't solve it. But he can't bear to move away from Hunting Island No. 1, so he's holed up in this factory. Because the virus broke out on Hunting Island No. 1, communication was also destroyed, so we can't contact them." At this point, Ding Zhiqing added another sentence, "Of course, it's also possible that after the virus broke out, the entire Hunting Island was occupied by zombies and infected creatures. Someone else discovered the mineral veins here first, and they were the first to get here." At this point, his face became a little serious. To be able to survive in this place where infected creatures were everywhere, the strength of this faction must not be underestimated. Wu, Dan smiled and nodded. Then he said a domineering sentence, "No matter which faction dares to steal Black Pack Gang's mineral vein, we'll destroy them." 244 Python genetic weapon. Wu, Dan looked at the green field in the middle of the Scarlet Hunting Island in the video. He said a domineering sentence, "No matter which faction dares to steal Black Pack Gang's mineral vein, we'll destroy them." This was the style of the Black Pack Gang. Domineering, domineering. When Ding Zhiqing heard this, he also nodded his head. Then he said to the mercenary controlling the drone, "Check the strength of the entire base." The mercenary nodded and his fingers danced on the keyboard. Soon, the drone released an invisible wave that spread throughout the base. Then, according to the reflected wave, everyone's strength was accurately measured. Looking at the data on the screen, Ding Zhiqing doubted his eyes. Level 2 Hunter. 1 person. Great Hunter. 133 people. More than 30,000 hunters. 2 Level 1 Psychic Masters. The rest are all zombie hunters and psychokinesis. The others heard this and looked at each other. Damn, this strength was too weak. Any level 3 hunter from their mercenary group could destroy this factory. Wu, Dan flicked his hair and asked, "Is there a problem with the drone?" Ding Zhiqing nodded. "It's possible." This was the only explanation. Otherwise, how could this group of unbelievably weak people be able to defend this place in a place filled with infected creatures and desolate beasts? "Send a few more drones to check it out," Ding Zhiqing said. The keyboard player quickly nodded. After a while, the results came back. Everyone quickly looked at the screen. It's exactly the same as before. But this is impossible. Ding Zhiqing said, although the people on the first hunting island were weak, they couldn't be this weak. Wu, Dan waved his hand domineeringly. "In that case, let's go directly to the factory and destroy them." Ding Zhiqing was very careful and said cautiously, "Master Wu, Dan, this is a bit strange. Let's figure it out first." Wu, Dan smiled and asked, "How many hunters above level 3 in your mercenary group? How many psychic masters above level 3? Ding Zhiqing replied, "There are more than 3,000 hunters above level 3. There are more than 200 greedy masters above level 3. Wu, Dan smiled. Any one of them could easily destroy this lousy place. Now there are more than 3,200 people. In front of absolute strength, any conspiracy is a joke. What are you afraid of? Ding Zhiqing heard this and nodded. Master Wu, Dan is right. Then he said to all the mercenaries behind him. Go to the center of the hunting island and destroy that factory. Although he was still a little worried, he couldn't refuse Master Wu, or Dan's request. And Master Wu, Dan was right. In front of absolute strength, any conspiracy was a joke. After a while, these more than 25,000 people had already arrived above the base. They looked down at the humans below with a disdainful smile on their faces. To them, any one of the people below was a noob. At the same time, the people in the fields below, who were controlling the robots to farm, also noticed the black mass of humans flying over from the sky. They were all shocked. Oh no, there are intruders. They still remembered that when they were on Earth, there were more than 2,000 people floating above their heads, looking down at them from a high vantage point. They were like a group of insufferably arrogant immortals, looking down on all living beings. Now, these insufferably arrogant guys appeared again. But last time, Mr. Mo was not in the base. This time, Mr. Mo was in the factory not far away. Thinking of this, everyone felt a lot more at ease. Someone quickly reported to the factory with a communicator. Intruders, intruders. Soon, the people above the factory also came out. They looked up at the sky, which was like a group of dark clouds. Just like when they were on Earth, they looked up to that group of people. But the difference was that at that time, there was only fear, shock, and despair in their hearts. But now, they were only curious. They were curious about what this group of people was doing here. As for fear and despair, there was no trace of it. Happy and Mr. Mo were here. If these people dared to make a move, they would be courting death. At the same time, Guo Jitao found Mo Sure in the factory. He reported, Mr. Mo, there are intruders. Rough estimate, there are more than 20,000 people. Mo Sure took a sip of the tea that Happy had just brewed and nodded. Well, not bad. Guo Jitao looked at Mo Sure's relaxed appearance and knew that he did not have to worry too much. With Mr. Mo's strength, it should not be a problem to deal with these people. Thinking of this, he said, Mr. Mo, I'll go out first. Mo Sure shook his head and said with a chuckle, let's take a look together. As he said that, he clapped his hands. On one of the walls of the room, the surveillance screen of the entire base suddenly appeared. Mo Sure said, above the factory. The screen immediately changed to the top of the base. In the screen, more than 20,000 people were looking at the base below with disdain. Guo Jitao could not help but feel nervous and asked, Mr. Mo, don't we need to go out? Mo Sure took a sip of tea and said again, just watch. Although Guo Jitao did not understand why, since Mo Sure said that he could just watch, he was happy to be idle. At the same time, in the sky, the more than 20,000 people were looking down at the base. That Erden stroked the bangs in front of his forehead, glanced at the ants below and said, let's start. Ding Zhiqing replied, yes, young Master Erden. Behind Ding Zhiqing, a level 5 hunter volunteered to fight, leader, I can do it alone. You and your brothers, as well as young Master Erden, can watch the show from the side. Ding Zhiqing nodded, okay. Sending a level 5 hunter to deal with the ants below was already giving them a lot of face. That level 5 hunter received the order and immediately flashed a genetic weapon on his right arm. It was actually a 100-meter-long, python-shaped genetic weapon. He was in the air, and the genetic weapon on his right arm was swung downwards. He shouted, you're just an ant. Die. The next moment, that python-shaped genetic weapon was like a 100-meter-long thick pillar, smashing down towards the base. In his eyes, there was already a bloodthirsty gaze. He had not killed anyone for a few months. Today, he was going to have a good time. However, at this moment, a strange change occurred. When his genetic weapon smashed into the air, it seemed to have smashed into an invisible barrier. Bang! not only did it not smash down. Instead, it was bounced back. Luckily, he withdrew his strength quickly. Otherwise, when it bounced back, it would have smashed his head and made him bleed. If a level 5 hunter's head was smashed by his own genetic weapon, that would be a joke. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.